Bucky didn't wear the steel suit, which was quietly kept in the laboratory, but with the Falcon flying wings, it was just more comfortable to fly and more convenient to travel. In real combat, in terms of lethality, what Bucky can do by himself is no worse than the steel suit. Moreover, the steel suit was a large iron can nearly 4 meters high, and the movement was too loud, which instead made Bucky lose his potential advantage. The Falcon flying wings are not the ones controlled by Sam in the future. They have not been improved to that extent. They only have the advantage of flying against targets like the Hulk. At other times, they are easy to become targets. Bucky himself is not afraid, but what a pity that the flying wing was broken. So when Bucky wanted to dispatch this time, he was still in the Winter Soldier mode alone. As for the villa, it was indeed a possible situation expected by Bucky and Howard. It is mainly Bucky who has a spoiler posture, unlike Howard who still has the last illusion about Obadiah, and has discussed various worst possibilities with him. That's why Bucky went to Stark Tower after Howard, and made a surprise investigation of Obadiah's various behaviors that harmed the company's interests. When shares. He proposed to let Hill and Daisy go to his house, and also sent some SHIELD agents to guard the perimeter. At the same time, Howard will also send out more trusted agents who have passed his screening to pay attention to the movements of other people. Baba basically thought that he had predicted Obadiah's behavior, and then he directly counterattacked and took Obadiah down in one fell swoop, and then he could find out who stimulated Obadiah, such a mastermind behind the scenes. And he also predicted that Obadiah might also predict his own prediction, and he was prepared for this, but he didn't expect that this preparation could exceed his expectations. The attack came so suddenly and fiercely. As soon as Bucky left the villa, he felt his scalp tingling, an extremely dangerous feeling, which made his stomach ache. However, it was just a thin, skinny old lady of Asian descent in a cheongsam and embroidered shoes, walking over with a cane. Wrong. The little old lady's feet seem to be slow, but they are fast. In this dark night, under the streetlights, she erratically approaches Bucky quickly. Bucky felt that he had been locked by the other party, and all his actions were under the control of the other party. This is the previous Murakami in his final stage of bursting with black gas, and he never gave Bucky a sense of danger. Cyber. Psychosis. Bucky didn't hesitate to use his strongest method now, the Orange Legend level quick cracking skill. However, the ultimate big move, the forward swing time is too long. The upload time, that is, the reading time is 7 seconds. Even if Bucky's equipment, specialties, and intelligence attributes have reduced CDs, it still needs at least 4 seconds. Although it was silent and there was no sign, the little old lady seemed to have a sense of a profound martial artist similar to martial arts novels, and she was a prophet of danger. She felt something was wrong in an instant, a sense of danger, which made her say in transformation directly. Drink. The little old lady yelled violently, and a wave of air visible to the naked eye was pushed away, and a pale golden light glowed all over her body, and her figure suddenly disappeared in Bucky's eyes. It's sizzling. But soon, the little old lady, who was more than 50 meters away from Bucky, appeared less than 10 meters away from Bucky, who was retreating rapidly, but there was an electric arc flashing on her body. Followed by a green mist. Bucky's skills only take time to upload, but they are not turn-based, and skills are only released in a flash. After cyberpsychosis is used up, there will be 3 consecutive series of sonic shock, electromagnetic short circuit and joint infection. But he doesn't have any chances, even Murakami can't do anything about the skills. Although he has upgraded later and has a higher intelligence attribute bonus, the little old lady in front of him is much more terrifying than Murakami. With this buffer, Bucky turned around and ran without hesitation. He wants to distance himself as much as possible and spend as much time as possible. As expected, the little old lady was only slowed down by a step, and she just let out a soft shout. Her thin and withered body suddenly stomped her feet. She actually stomped a dent in the asphalt road, her figure blurred, and rushed towards Bucky again. Boom. But what was waiting for her was that Bucky's right forearm suddenly opened, stretched out the missile bracket, and a missile directly hit the ground in front of her. Although the little old lady is very powerful, even more powerful than Murakami, she must also abide by the law of gravity that Hulk must abide by. The violent explosion couldn't hurt her, but the airwave caused her to fly up involuntarily. Drink. Just when Bucky was about to turn around and run again, his pupils shrank suddenly, and the hairs all over his body exploded. Because he heard the little old lady yell like thunder, and saw her arms flying in the air like Iron Man, clapping her palms back, there was a sound of explosion, and her thin and small body it actually froze in the air for a moment, and then rushed towards Bucky like an arrow from the string. This hanging made Bucky envious and jealous, but he didn't have time for mental activity at all. He had no time to turn around and run again, so he could only retreat quickly. But it's too late. The little old lady had already appeared in front of Bucky, with a solemn expression, and she pushed out with a pale golden palm. Dead. As if facing a fierce tiger's pounce, the bloody mouth with serrated fangs appeared in front of him. In the instant of life and death, Bucky felt that everything around him was still. Then, all the movements in the field of vision are slowing down. The little old lady's speed, which was difficult to catch with the naked eye, was suddenly clearly visible. Bucky directly activated the dual states of explosive gas and super violent. He didn't expect that this little old lady was so terrifying. After he met Murakami, he tried his best to think about her strength, but she was still stronger than he imagined. He couldn't even wait for the upload time of cyber psychosis, which was only 4 seconds. Then don't wait. At the juncture of life and death, Bucky directly turned over his strongest hole card. Once the dual status is turned on, both physical and reaction attributes soar from 11 points to 34 points, and 25% of the time to slow down the effect. What? Bucky felt a flame of rage ignited from the bottom of his heart, instantly igniting his whole body. With a violent roar, Baji's body, which was about to be slapped on the chest by Mrs. Gao's palm, suddenly burst out with violent power, and he took a step back. Followed by the left arm suddenly hit the past. Boom. Before the fists and palms touched, the power between them had already exploded into the air, and there was a roar like a grenade explosion. The fists and palms intersected, and the little old lady felt a tingling pain in her metacarpal bones, and her feet involuntarily fell backwards. This made her pupils almost shrink to the tip of a needle in an instant. She finally knew what happened to Murakami. The power user on the opposite side didn't use his real strength at all just now. What? Bucky punched hard with his left arm. With the terrifying power of the dual burst skills, coupled with the power output of the prosthetic gorilla arm, he was blown away by the terrifyingly strong little old lady. But the effect of force is mutual. As much as the little old lady is impacted, Bucky himself will be impacted as much. Both of them retreated rapidly. Bucky only felt the prosthetic skin of his left fist, and it kept feeding back the tingling pain like needles. Fortunately, after Bucky turned on, his defensive power also increased sharply, and it was no problem to connect his face with an anti-equipment sniper rifle. It's just a mere pain, and it can't cause any hindrance to him who is in a state of rage. Moreover, the intelligence attribute added by Baji for the upgrade, and the calm attribute added by the explosive state, offset a lot of negative effects of Super Berserk, and the last trace of reason he maintained told him that time was limited. The two states are activated at the same time, and he consumes 12 points of energy per second. Even if he adds the physical attribute and bonus energy, it is only enough for him to activate for 25 seconds. After 25 seconds, how could he face such a terrifying enemy in a tired state? Bucky has considered this the last 25 seconds of his life. Kill or be killed. Spell, or die. He let himself forget about everything, and threw himself into the rage. I saw the red and blue neon blocks flashing in Bucky's right hand, conjured up a field knife, kicked his feet on the ground suddenly, almost broke through the air and rushed towards the little old lady. Although the little old lady was shocked by Bucky's sudden outburst, she finally understood how Murakami died. Those superpowers before were just tricks to her, but now that the other party is so violent, he can give her all his strength. Hit back, it is unheard of horror. But that wasn't enough to scare her. The other party had reservations, and she only used 8% of her strength, but since the other party could threaten her, she had to go all out without reservation. But just as the little old lady was about to unreservedly exercise her energy to raise her chi, she suddenly felt a hum in her head, and then she was stunned. But she took Bucky's sudden outburst as the source of the vaguely dangerous feeling that Bucky gave her before. But they don't know that Bucky's real ultimate move is not just a dual-state explosion. What? However, in Bucky's eyes, the little old lady didn't stop, but suddenly let out a hysterical and crazy scream, and then rushed over. But the golden light glowing from her body, and the air current wrapped around her were all gone. She just rushed towards Bucky like crazy, waving her fists indiscriminately. She's already suffering from cyberpsychosis. This is indeed a quick cracking skill at the Orange Legend level, and even such a powerful little old lady can't resist it. Although the little old lady was able to resist Bucky's skills before, she was hit first, and then used chi to resist. Not only her, but Hulk will be the first to be recruited. And cyberpsychosis is a direct attack on the brain. There is something wrong with her mind. How can she still think about resisting? She even forgot to use chi. This is where cyberpsychosis is at its worst. The little old lady who treated Bucky as an enemy was terrifying, crazy little old lady. But Bucky only blocked it with one block, and then with a backhand knife. The field knife went in from the opponent's left rib. Blood flew instantly. But in fact, Bucky felt that what he pierced was not flesh and blood, but a piece of frozen pork. Although the little old lady is confused and unable to mobilize chi on her own, her body has been using it to polish and nourish it bit by bit since she mastered it. Body, but also a steel body. Even with Bucky's violent strength, it takes a lot of force to poke it in. Not tall. Stop. Exene. At this moment, the three directions in the darkness shouted almost in unison, and the three figures rushed towards Bucky like ghosts. And all three of them threw out a black light wrapped in a faint golden light. However, although the speed of the three is fast, far exceeding the limit of human beings, in Bucky's eyes, they are just average. Bucky grinned grimly. He didn't care about the three hidden weapons flying over, but gave the two of them who rushed over, one person a high-explosive sniper bomb, the other arm missile, and then forcefully with his hand, he stabbed half of the field knife, keep poking in. Among the three figures, the white lady and the black brother in white leather pants exploded instantly, but although they couldn't avoid it, they all held it with the explosion that stopped, and only one looked at the 20-year-old Arab. A curly-haired young man of mixed race of Asian and Asian descent continued to charge with a rapier in his hand. One shuriken and two throwing knives hit Bucky's body with a popping sound, but they couldn't penetrate Bucky's skin at all. How did Bucky suffer from Murakami last time? This time I will give it back. Boom. On the other hand, the little old lady took advantage of Bucky's difficulty in distraction, and hit him with a fist with all her strength, hitting Bucky's nose hard, giving him a sore nose, and making him subconsciously look up. At this time, the curly-haired man had already rushed to Bucky's side, and the rapier in his hand stabbed out like lightning. However, this curly hair is the youngest and looks the most vigorous and agile, but he gives Bucky the least sense of danger. Sure enough, Bucky's shot was like lightning, and he grabbed Curly's rapier with one stroke. Although this made his palms hurt and his skin was cut by the rapier, it was only limited to this. The rapier instantly turned into a poisonous snake that was pinched 7 inches, struggling hard but unable to move. And the rapier is very resilient. Bucky even wrapped it around his hand. While the blood splattered, he also snatched the rapier, directly splitting the curly-haired tiger's mouth, rubbing off a layer of skin on the palm of his hand. What? Bucky, who was in pain and stimulated, was even more violent, kicked out suddenly, and directly put it in Curly's heart. Crack. In an instant, there was the sound of bones breaking, and Curly spurted out a mouthful of blood. His chest collapsed from being kicked, his back bulged and his clothes were torn, and then he flew upside down. Border. No. Damn. The other two roared in grief and anger, but their sprinting figures involuntarily slowed down. I thought that even if the opponent killed Murakami, it was using insidious means. I don't know how many people besieged him, but I didn't expect that the opponent killed Murakami one-on-one. Not only that, the opponent not only surpassed Murakami in strength, but even Mrs. Gao, who was the strongest among their 5 fingers, was not an opponent. In the black sky, why is there such a terrifying enemy in the world? However, the horror was not over yet. After the opponent killed Botu, the dagger finally completely sank into Mrs. Gao's body, and then swiped hard, splashing blood, and swayed an arc in the air. This scene was inexplicably cruel but full of blood, the beauty of violence. But how can they appreciate it? Yali, run. Run separately. Where do you want to run to? Don't come here. Huh. Huh. Bucky was drenched with sweat, his face was covered with bean-sized beads of sweat, dripping down his chin. Looking down at the charming white lady, he pulled out the field knife and inserted into her body little by little. He's out of double rage. Because the noble lady and the black brother in white leather voted if they couldn't beat decisively, and even ran separately. Although they couldn't beat Bucky, they tried their best to survive. Bucky really almost couldn't catch up with the last one, and when his energy was about to be exhausted, he inserted the field knife into the heart of the lady, ending her life. He gasped for a moment, regained his strength a little, lifted one of the noble lady's feet, and dragged towards Brother Hay's lying position. But there is no joy of victory in the battle in my heart, and I don't even feel relieved. He was just wondering, how could the battle be so easy? Well, it wasn't easy, but after he killed Murakami, he fired it several times and used the orange epic skill, cyber neuropathy, to have this kind of battle. Crushing victory. But this procedure is wrong. A mere village has 3 stages: normal stage, explosive stage, and black space energy possession. How could the other 4 fingers, including the most powerful Mrs. Gao, be taken down so easily? What about Black Sky Prayer? What about the second line? Could it be that what I met was a fake hand with 5 fingers? But the names are all right. The little old lady Mrs. Gao, the curly-haired Botu, the lady named Yali should be Alexandra, and Brother Hayes should be Suawanda. But why? But when Bucky was wondering, a cold feeling rose in Bucky's heart, a cold breath that made him slightly numb, rushed straight from his tailbone to the top of his head. Coming. That damn feeling, it counts as coming. Does Bucky feel a little bit masochistic? Is it going well? Isn't it good to crush? I have to talk about it. This has finally been talked about, so be sure. However, the cold and numb feeling that made him disappear in a flash. Bucky was stunned for a moment, but the next moment he saw it directly. This is because the dark air coming from the lady in his hand, which made him cold and numb, did not penetrate into his body, but just passed by him and flew directly over. Not only the noble lady, but Suawanda and Mrs. Gao also had black energy rising from their bodies, and then rushed towards Botu, who was exuding surging black energy. And don't look at the youngest blogger who has the least chi. Suawanda, who is in his 30s, is stronger than him, and Alexandra, who is in his 40s, is stronger. The combined chi of the 3 of them is not as good as Mrs. Gao 1/10 of. But on the contrary, Mrs. Gao's body had the least amount of black air, while Botu's body was already so thick that it was almost like ink. Bucky felt bad for a moment, let go of Alexandra's ankle, and quickly backed away. He also wanted to directly target Botu's skills, but the system judged that Botu was still a dead man. Then just hit it physically. Bucky took out the high-explosive anti-material sniper rifle, 05, again, left 05 and right arm high-explosive missiles, and shot at Botu together. However, what made his eyes widen was that the high-explosive sniper bombs and missiles exploded, but they were surrounded by black air. There was no sound, only a slightly dim flame, no thunder, and little rain. Run. This weird scene made Bucky turn around and run away without hesitation. Heroes don't suffer from immediate disadvantages. None of the 4 bosses have a second stage, but it is because they have directly merged into the second stage. A Mrs. Gao is enough to see how exaggerated the 4 of them fit together. Where do you want to run to? But at this moment, Bucky's voice sounded a bit like a lady's, but more like a ghost's. Following the cold and numb feeling hit again. Damn guy, I want your life. This time it's a bit like the voice of Hige Suawanda, mixed with Botu's voice, and it's more like a ghost. There's no need for Bucky to give him cyberpsychosis, he's already mentally ill. Bucky's hairs were already standing on end, and he accelerated his sprint speed without hesitation. But he couldn't help turning his head back, and saw the extremely black eyes, like the color of the abyss. Botu, who was motionless, tapped his feet a few times, and just panned and chased after him. Madman. Seeing this, Bucky once again made 3 consecutive skills. The weapon is useless, the chi value has not been restored to full, and it is not enough to activate the berserk for a few seconds, so he can only point at the skill. But electromagnetic short circuit and joint infection are still useless. Just let the ghostly blogger get 2 frames. And the upload time of cyberpsychosis is a full 4 seconds. So here comes the question. Looking at the ultimate blogger who is several times more terrifying than Mrs. Gao, how many times can he kill Bucky in 4 seconds? The answer is don't even think about it once. The cold energy invaded Bucky's body again, and the moment he felt numb, he turned on the explosion and super rage again without hesitation. Bucky suddenly got stuck too. It was with the greatest willpower in his life that he barely restrained the urge to stop, turn around and fight to the end with the psychopath. Just continue to sprint without looking back. Call. Bucky's sudden outburst of violent force brought a clearly audible whistling sound, and the whole person almost became a somewhat blurred figure. However, at this point, he was horrified to find that the Botu who caught a glimpse behind him could keep up with his speed from the corner of his eye. No, it was faster than his speed. You humble ants, how dare you offend the great black sky? I want to take out your soul and torture you endlessly. And at this moment, Botu can no longer hear the voice of any person who has merged in, but pure ghost crying and God howling. Bang. Bucky only felt a huge force coming from his back, a sharp pain made his eyes stare, his throat was sweet, and his body involuntarily flew into the air. However, the pain was only for a moment, and then it was occupied by cold numbness. He only felt that he fell to the ground, but it seemed no different from sitting and lying on the ground. And Bo2 also rushed in front of Bucky, his palms also turned black, and 5 fingers grabbed Bucky's throat. However, at the moment when Bo2's fingers touched the skin of Bucky's neck, he was stuck again, and then he directly pressed the pause button, completely still. But the black energy on his body started to go berserk. Bucky felt light all over his body, and the cold and numb feeling disappeared, but at this time, he also exhausted his energy again, exited the double berserk state, and was seriously injured again. Bo2 knocked out a third of Bucky with only one blow. So much life. He could only feel limp all over, and used his hands and feet to move backwards out of Bo2's control. Presumptuous. 4 lowly maids and lowly slaves in the district dare to resist my will. Kill you. This body is mine. No, it's mine. You're all going to die. Your souls are mine. Die. Die. Then I saw Bo2 standing there, his whole body twitching incoordinated and disorderly. His voice and expression were constantly changing, and he became Bo2 for a while, Suwanda or Alexandra for a while. Even the voice of Mrs. Gao, who hadn't erupted for a long time, came out. Opportunity. When Howard Stark received the call from Obadiah, he was in Stark Tower, Obadiah's CCO office, leading his auditors to thoroughly investigate all his actions that harmed the company's interests. He has turned a blind eye to Obadiah's various behaviors for so many years, but he has also brought out all the black materials he has accumulated. He wants to completely crucify this old friend and partner who has cooperated for many years. So when he received a call from Obadiah, he was very shocked. Since we are going to kill him, of course we have to be on guard against the dog jumping over the wall. Not only there are trustworthy SHIELD agents, but also Bucky is ready to go out at any time. He had negotiated with Bucky to wait for Obadiah to show his true colors before capturing him in one fell swoop. But breaking into his house would be enough without waiting for him to strap the bomb vests on Maria and Tony. However, Howard suddenly couldn't contact Bucky at this time. He suddenly felt that something was wrong, but he had to face the problem by himself. He rushed to the laboratory in a hurry, put on the steel suit, soared into the sky, and flew towards the villa on Long Island. Then just when he flew into the range of Long Island, he suddenly noticed that there was a bright spot in the sky in the distance, which was constantly rising. It was Bucky who was manipulating the steel battlesuit, a pair of mechanical arms tightly hugging the Bo2 controlled by Hei Kong, soaring into the sky. 2 sets of steel suits. That's right. When Bucky saw Bo2, or the evil that controlled him in the black sky, he also got hit by his quick cracking skill, cyber neuropathy, souls, but only controlled them, but was recognized by the system as the same target, so they were recruited at the same time. The souls of 4 fingers directly rebelled, and the evil spirits that existed in the same body started a big melee. The effect of cyberpsychosis is to attack the nearest enemy regardless of whether it is the enemy or the enemy, and the closest to them is not Bucky who is right in front of them, but themselves. Bucky realized in an instant that this might be his only chance, but he was seriously injured by Bo2's blow, and he couldn't go berserk, so he couldn't do anything to Bo2 who was full of black energy. But he can't do anything about it, but it doesn't mean he really can't. Behind Bucky, there was a sudden flash of red and blue neon color blocks, and in the breath, an extra set of steel battlesuits appeared. With the official completion of the iron suit, Bucky also completed the scan, and used the portable printing workshop to create the arc reactor, and then completed the production of the system vehicle version of the iron suit. It's just that this set of steel suits really looks like a bigger iron overlord. It still maintains the original color of the metal, and the 4 fingers and various parts of the torso are not equipped with auxiliary props such as riot suppression and rescue, but all kinds of munitions are armed to the teeth. This is a possibility proposed by Bucky and a spare model designed together with Howard. But Bucky didn't shoot directly, and greeted with the machine gun and grenade gun. That's useless. Bucky's own sniper rifles and missiles are more powerful than the weapons on the steel suit, but they can't do anything to Bo2, they can't break the defense at all. That's why Bucky never took out the steel suit, which is relatively clumsy despite its firepower and strength. Not to mention the current blogger, even the former Mrs. Gao, they were all big toys that she dismantled and played with. But Bucky directly imprisoned Bo2 with his steel arms, and then came to kill him with a hug in his arms, and then his feet erupted with flames, soaring into the sky. If you can hit him, you might as well not fight. Bucky also plans to come to that scene in the Iron Man movie, and prepare to freeze this guy into a lump of ice, and then pay tribute to his good friend, and launch Bo2 directly into the sea. Antarctica is looking for his big muscle brother. If you can't find it, don't come back. As for whether Bucky's steel suit has considered the issue of icing, it has naturally been considered. However, it is useless, time and energy are limited, and the existing materials and technology are limited. This problem has not been resolved for the time being. But Bucky did it without hesitation. The steel battlesuit flew into the air, and soon accelerated to Mach 1.5, and it was lifted rapidly, 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters. Botu has been struggling, but unconsciously, his whole body twisted and twitched unnaturally and chaotically, and he yelled and cursed chaotically. Although he was surrounded by black energy, his strength was so great that his arms of steel creaked continuously, but couldn't get rid of the power output of more than 10 tons of the steel suit. Until about 20 seconds later, the entire Long Island, the entire New York, became the size of a map, and the surface of the steel suit gradually showed signs of icing. The steel suit had reached the top layer of the troposphere at this time, and the temperature here had dropped to below -50 degrees Celsius. However, Botu was not directly frozen into a popsicle. It's just that Bucky noticed that the black air around him was much thinner. Are you using black air to resist the cold? Where there is resistance, there is consumption. Bucky saw it with his own eyes, and his confidence was greatly increased. He pushed the power of the steel suit to the limit and continued to sprint. He had to rush higher before the steel suit was completely frozen. However, at this moment, Botu's struggle suddenly stopped. A moment of calm. Humble ants. How dare you repeatedly offend the great black sky, you are unpardonable. Squeak. Botu returned to the ghostly howling that didn't sound like a human voice, and he let out a violent and somewhat embarrassing roar. His arms were so hard that his fingers tightly grasped the arms of the steel suit, and in a burst of squeaks that made Bucky's heart chill, ripped the steel arms apart. Too fast. The cyberpsychosis lasted for 60 seconds, but Bucky reacted after being recruited by Botu, summoned the steel suit and ignited it into the air. It has not been 30 seconds until now. This is because there are 4 rebellious souls in the opponent's body case. The black air that had been gradually fading suddenly erupted violently, rushing in through the gaps in the steel suit. Boom. Bucky felt the cold and numb moment again, but the shield of the arc reactor on the chest of the steel suit suddenly opened, and the arc reactor inside emitted a dazzling blue light. Bucky directly controlled the overloading of the arc's reactor. The steel suit that was gradually freezing, that was about to turn off, suddenly sprinted violently, and a shock wave erupted from the reactor in his chest. The huge impact directly hit Botu's chest. Let him directly give the iron battlesuit arms and grab the 2 shells directly, but he was still blown away. His whole body was wrapped in black air, like a huge black cloud, quickly moving away from Bucky, but there was still a black line connected to the steel suit. And the arc reactor also turned off after being overloaded, and the steel suit instantly fell into a free fall. One was blasted upwards obliquely, and the other fell in free fall. The distance between the 2 sides was instantly pulled away, and the connecting line of black energy became thinner and thinner, and it was about to be disconnected at last. Damn. Bucky is in free fall. However, he didn't feel anything, not because he had experienced a lot when playing Falcon Flying Wings, and he was already used to it. It was that too much black air had invaded his body, and his whole body was frozen numb and unconscious. Since he's the Winter Soldier, he's always been associated with cold things? But Bucky didn't panic, and even thought about complaining. Unlike Murakami's evil spirit attack last time, this time it only descended on Botu's body. The black air will, controlling the black energy as an attack method to attack Bucky, whether it is the black air will, or the 4-fingered evil spirit controlled by him, none came. But it's just black energy. Since it is in Bucky's body, the system judges that it is named Barnes, and it is a kind of energy that can be absorbed. Just suck it up. Although the black sky is still screaming and screaming, the altitude of more than 1 meter, the thin oxygen and the temperature minus, are all helpless. It is not surprising that this is no longer a human being, and it does not even belong to carbon-based, the scope of life. And if he keeps him, he will have to find trouble with Bucky later, but at least the immediate crisis is temporarily resolved. With a respite, let the system absorb the energy of the black space, give a few healing needles, repair it, and be a good man again. Bucky maintained the state of free fall, looked at the black air mass in the sky that was still connected with a black line with him, and gritted his teeth for a while. You old man, I'm exhausted with you bastard today. But at this moment, the black air wrapped around Botu's body suddenly shrank sharply. In an instant, Botu's body was revealed. His originally young and healthy body was instantly turned into a mummified corpse. What? There was a loud voice, and suddenly there was a crazy ghost scream that seemed sharp, hoarse, deep, and high-pitched in Bucky's mind. Let his mind buzz for a moment, only to see a cloud of black air rushing towards the black line that was about to be broken. Then it went dark. Vision, hearing, and touch suddenly disappeared. Silent as death, black as the abyss. However, Bucky could see an indescribable, twisting, roaring existence exuding a cold and evil aura. Bucky didn't know where it was, but felt it was everywhere. It seems that this extreme evil has swallowed him, making him gradually cold and numb. Then there was a sudden sharp pain, and suddenly it seemed that his soul was burning. What? Bucky screamed silently. Die, you humble ants. Crawl at the feet of the great master and bear the eternal pain. You will never be reborn. Ant, where else can you go? Bucky's ears sounded Botu and other three fingers again, and an evil and chaotic voice, but they were not mixed together, but separated. But he didn't have the intention to taunt at all. He tried his best to restrain the pain, keep the final sobriety, and communicate with the system. Even this place that is completely isolated from the outside world can't stop Bucky from connecting with the system. System information. Invaded by black space energy, evil spirit remnants and unknown substances, various negative states such as paralysis, mental shock, neurological damage, etc., lost control of the body, and the life value continued to decrease. Sure enough, it was possession again, but this time it was more powerful. 4 evil spirits like Murakami came together with their masters. That's just one word. Dismantle. System. Use the black space energy in my body to dismantle the remnants of evil spirits. Scan for unknown substances and dismantle them. System information. Extracting black space energy, scanning and dismantling. What is this? What? An inexplicable and shocking ghost cry, and 4 screams appeared at the same time. No. This is impossible. What kind of existence is behind you? The evil and violent black sky, after the shocking ghost scream, suddenly turned into horror. He felt locked by an unknown existence that even he couldn't perceive. That existence constantly perceives and analyzes him, making him feel like he has been seen, but he can't even sense where the other party is. And he also has an extremely dangerous premonition. If he is really seen through by the other party, something very dangerous to him will happen. Although this is just a little awareness of his coming, but changing the body of his subordinates requires the sacrifice of hundreds of people's lives. How can Haikong make a loss-making business? And if Haikong is like this, let alone his 4 subordinates, Haikong still has time to be scanned, and the ghost with 4 fingers will be dismantled directly. At this time, Haikong finally showed a trace of remorse. If he had known that this ant who offended him had an existence like him as his master behind him, at least he would not personally take risks and go to the opponent's home field to fight. Now that you regret it, retreat decisively. Don't look at how powerful Haikong is, but it depends on who the person is showing off. His tyranny is unrivaled, and it's only for Bucky. In the existence of different dimensions, he is not so powerful at all. Encountering a more powerful existence, and even breaking into their home field, let them make a fuss. What are you waiting for if you don't run? Humble ants, this is not the end. The great Haikong will settle all this with you sooner or later. Hey, isn't he going to catch him and torture him endlessly? When Bucky heard the roar with a stern tone, he also felt his body loosen suddenly, and the cold and numb feelings suddenly receded like a tide. System fraud. A huge fluke filled Bucky's heart in an instant. The system was as powerful as ever, no matter if it was 5 fingers or their master Haikong. If they dared to send it to their door, they would not explain anything. It's just that Haikong's consciousness wants to run away, and Bucky has no way to keep him. Although he lost his perception of the outside world, Bucky knew that more than 10 seconds had passed since he was hacked. Because at the beginning of the free fall, he took a look at the cooldown time of the cyber psychosis skill. The cooldown time is as long as 120 seconds, even with the feat of shortening the CD, there are still 102 seconds, there is no time for another shot. And Bucky has not forgotten, he is still in free fall, don't pester him for a while, Haikong is disgusting, and then he wakes up and sees that he himself has become an evil spirit. Traveling through this kind of thing, once is enough up. And so, the system only scans and disassembles the intruding unknown substances, leaving the remnants alone. You can't just let this bastard who torments him so ruthlessly go. Bucky asked the system to put down the dismantling of the remnant soul, and concentrate on doing black and empty all at once. No. Damn. You wait, we are endless. The system concentrated the work items on the existence of Haikong, and the speed increased instantly, causing Haikong to scream, and then there was no movement. Only Bucky's black aura covered his body, and 4 remnant souls that kept howling were left behind, and they fled away. Bucky broke away from that endlessly dark place in an instant, and recovered his 5 senses. Then I felt the indescribable feeling of falling brought by the powerful acceleration of gravity. Wonima. Howard controlled the steel suit and landed tens of meters away from his villa. Then he opened the steel suit and walked out from inside. He saw a group of people coming out from the villa, Obadiah's iconic bearded and bald head, followed by heavily armed soldiers. Among them were his wife and son, Butler Jarvis, Bucky's girlfriend and foster daughter. This made him look up at the sky involuntarily. The bright spot that soared into the sky, if nothing else happened, it should be Bucky, and he didn't know what happened to him. The sudden change in the situation disrupted his plans and made him unable to find an opportunity to break the situation for a while. He could only wait for Obadiah, who had a gloomy and complicated expression, but gradually became firm, and turned into a vicious one, then walked up to him with his expression back, and asked with a smile. "Who oh ye, you're back. I can't wait to see you. Where's your new servant? Don't you want to play tricks?" Obadiah said, gestured the small remote control in his hand to Howard, and glanced at the mother and son wearing bomb vests. Howard said in his heart that if my little follower was here, would you be able to tolerate you showing off your power in front of me? Obi, how did it become like this? Why is it so? What good results can you get? Stop it, stop now, and there is still a chance to get a decent ending. Haha. Obadiah smiled happily when he heard the words, really? Is it too late to stop now? That's really great. I'm yuck. He spat fiercely on the ground, pointed at Howard and grinned. This is the end. What else is there to stop? Then he took another puff on his cigar. Besides, why can't I have good results? Who can prove what I did? I just came to visit on a temporary basis, but found that when your family was at home, the gas pipe leaked. Come by then, you would have all died in the fire. Obadiah, acquaintance, friends for decades, how can you? At least let Tony and the little girl go. Arrange for them to go overseas, and never come back for the rest of their lives. Then you will become Stark. Those in power of the group, they pose no threat to you. Really? Don't they threaten me at all? Hoy, I've always wanted to ask you. How stupid is your incomparable genius brain thinking of me? Obi, Howard, Mr. Stark, the matter has come to this point, it is useless to say more. I can only say that I can only do so much for you so that you will not feel pain. A fierce look flashed across Obadiah's eyes, and he took out an M1911, a pistol from his arms, pointed the muzzle at Howard's head. This is the first weapon you gave me back then. Stark Industries. I have been taking good care of the first batch of 1911s produced. But when will I use this gun to kill your idea? But it doesn't matter, anyway. This idea will definitely come true now. No. No. Both Maria and Tony, who had their mouths taped together, were struggling. The other Maria hugged little Daisy and put her arms around her head, preventing her from seeing what was about to happen. With a look on her face, she finally couldn't hold on to her last ray of hope. However, just as Obadiah put the gun on Howard's forehead, Howard was still spinning his mind quickly, thinking that he could stop Obadiah's rhetoric. It's sizzling. An electric arc suddenly erupted from Obadiah's body. And it wasn't just him. The same happened to the 4 fighters closest to him. An electric arc flickered for a moment, their bodies suddenly stiffened, and then they fell to the ground and twitched. Vomit. At the same time, there were 3 more soldiers. A green mist suddenly erupted from their bodies, followed by the 6 soldiers around them, who had headaches, nausea, abdominal pains, all the ailments that could be suffered in this life, with their upper bodies together, vomiting, and fell to the ground. After that, the severe pain exceeded the limit and passed out. However, there are still 7 fighters who have not been recruited. But caught off guard, before everyone reacted, the accident happened again. Puff. The soldier closest to Hill, who was holding Daisy, suddenly felt his back sink, and suddenly leaned back, but his body still had no time to react. There was a sharp pain in the back of his neck, followed by his throat. He was pierced through the throat by an invisible sharp object from behind. The invisible object was covered with blood, revealing the outline of the mechanical foot. However, this was not over yet. The tip of the mechanical leg suddenly lit up with a bright red light, followed by a laser being fired, and with a bang, it directly burned through a soldier's head. However, with a slight swing of the mechanical foot, the laser light followed half of another soldier's neck before it went out. Enemy attack. Careful. It was 3 more fighters who settled the account, and the remaining 4 fighters reacted, but they still didn't know what to face. The great fear of the unknown made them at a loss for a while. But they found their target right away. The body of the soldier who was stabbed through the throat was slapped on the ground, but a delicate but weird little machine with 6 mechanical legs on a metal square box appeared on the head. This startled Hill next to him. However, the little machine flipped its 6 mechanical legs upside down and rushed towards a warrior. Choo choo choo. The 4 soldiers rushed to shoot, but they couldn't keep up with the speed of the weird little machine. Only 1 or 2 bullets hit the little machine, but they only wiped out a little spark, which couldn't hurt it at all. What? Suddenly, like a face-hugging bug, the little machine threw itself on the face of a soldier, and the blood-stained mechanical feet thrust in suddenly. With an indescribable sound, the mechanical feet were inserted directly from the tinneling cap. Choo choo choo. Ding ding ding. The remaining 3 fighters shot at the small machine without hesitation, but it just made the small machine burst out with sparks, but still couldn't make any scratches. Instead, the stray bullets flew randomly, and Hill, who reacted quickly to being scared, hugged the little Daisy who had been frightened for a long time, and flew behind Maria and Tony mother and son, and they also fell to the ground. Lie down. It's sizzling. However, at this moment, the remaining 3 people suddenly erupted with an electric arc, and they twitched and fell limp to the ground. So far, Obadiah and his men are all wiped out. The scene suddenly quieted down. Everyone looked at each other for a while. Howard. No no no. The mother and son, who were thrown to the ground by Hill, suddenly screamed and struggled to get up and ran towards Howard. Instead, he saw Howard sitting on the ground with his hands covering his shoulders, and blood continued to ooze from his fingers. They were lucky not to be hit by stray bullets, but Howard was shot. Daisy. Are you okay? Hill also quickly looked at the little Daisy in his arms. Fortunately, she was still in a daze, her eyes were loose. What a fart. Well, although it was a narrow escape, and Bucky must have made the right move, why did he send out such a weird little robot? What about others? At this moment, there was the sound of a jet engine starting, and a figure descended from the sky. Hey. Are you all right? Although Bucky fell from the sky, he didn't appear on the scene. He originally performed a diving action with his feet facing down, but he landed with the cushion of the jet engine, and landed smoothly. But the moment he landed, his legs gave way, and he almost fell to the ground. This is not over yet. As soon as Bucky stabilized his figure, he held his chest and coughed repeatedly. He coughed up faint black air visible to the naked eye, and then spit out a mouthful of dark red blood with a puff. The blood was even mixed with ice slag that is breathing a little bit of cold air. This made Hill, who ran over, change from, "Where did you die?" to, "Are you okay?" She has just experienced being held at gunpoint with her child. No matter how much she looks forward to it, Bucky can't be expected. Hope is lost a little bit, until the process of despair. She knows that he must have a reasonable reason. If it is someone else, she will hold she has a frosty aura, but she can't help being filled with grievances towards him. Until she saw Bucky like this, all her resentment turned into concern in an instant. If her man wasn't like this, how could he put them in danger and ignore them? Cough. It's okay. I'm sorry to make you worry. Hey, little guy. Uncle? With Hill holding his arm, Bucky watched little Daisy gradually come to his senses, recognized him, then sniffled with red eyes, and quickly took her to hold him in his arms. The familiar smell and the familiar embrace gave the little guy a sense of security, and he couldn't help hugging Bucky hard, sobbing softly, his whole body trembling. What a crime. Bucky stroked the little guy's hair, and continued to curse Hey Kong in 30 languages. In his heart. Under Bucky's signal, Hill helped him walk towards Howard, calmed down a little and asked curiously, "What kind of enemy did you encounter?" She had never seen such a miserable and desolate Bucky. "Do you still remember the person who made Frank so miserable last time? This time he came to take revenge, as powerful as the guy last time, not 1, not 2, not 3. Bucky smiled bitterly, and couldn't help but think of the situation when he just ran away from the black space. Although in the end Bucky asked the system to ignore the 4 evil spirits of the 4 fingers of the hand and only dismantle Hey Kong, but in the end it was still not complete, and it might not even hurt him too hard. After all, he still had thoughts in the end speak harshly. But no matter what, it can be regarded as regaining some of the miserably done by this bastard. But the most urgent task is to solve the problem of free fall first. Iron Suit is still a big ice lump. But it's not a big problem. Following Bucky's thought, the Iron Suit was wrapped in red and blue neon color blocks, and it was quickly included in the system. Feeling the unparalleled acceleration of gravity, Bucky quickly adjusted his posture, summoned the Falcon's flying wings, ignited it, and instantly changed from diving to gliding. But before he could heave a sigh of relief, He was immediately surrounded by that cold and numb feeling. Black air was scattered all over his body, and ghost screams sounded in his mind again. Haikong ran away, but neither his energy nor the 4 dead ghosts were taken away. They were frightened before, and their great master ran away, but Bucky didn't have time to pay attention to them. Just for a while, they started rebelling again. But the problem is still not big. The owner has been beaten away. Are you afraid that just 4 dogs will fail? System. However, Bucky was about to give himself an electromagnetic short circuit, so that the 4 dead ghosts who came uninvited would know what the rules of the master's house are. But suddenly, Bucky felt a warm feeling coming from his body out of thin air, and then he actually saw it. To be precise, it was a picture different from vision, which appeared in his mind, but was extremely clear. Hi. Why are you still angry? What are you going to do? Ah. Bucky actually saw the phantom of a kind old grandma, exuding a sacred golden light all over her body, surrounded by 3 black air masses. The golden light seemed to be aggressive towards the air masses, which caused the consciousness in the 3 air masses to howl again and again. And it seemed that it was this golden light that helped to suppress the black energy in Bucky's body. Isn't this gas? Bucky, who has beaten all 5 fingers of the hand, is very familiar with this energy, but where does this energy come from? And it seemed that not only Bucky, but the other 3 fingers were also surprised. Young man, can you take a break from fighting and give the old man a chance to speak? System. Absorb all the different kinds of energy in my body, and dismantle all the remnants of the soul. Bucky ignored this seemingly harmless Madame Gao's remnant soul. Have something to say? Why did you go early? Why didn't you say it when you shot without saying a word, and now you think about it? Late. Bucky doesn't care if she has hidden secrets or not. Even if she does, she is not qualified to make Bucky understand her. And the old ghost who has lived for hundreds of years, who knows if he is planning something? It is still the most practical to dismantle it directly. Sigh. I regret that I fell into the control of the evil god because of the 5-finger friendship. Although I have never truly believed in him, I have not been able to do anything. This is the end of the matter. Let it go. Drink. Seeing that Bucky had no intention of giving her a chance, Madame Gao sighed, and then became ruthless and decisive. It's sizzling. When Bucky saw it, the old man was really not a good person. How could someone speak well when he was about to die, and he didn't want to take a bite at the end? So he resolutely struck himself with an electromagnetic short circuit. An electric arc flashed all over his body, and he felt an indescribable numbness and pain, and the screams of 3 black air masses rang out in his mind. But Mrs. Gao insisted on not saying a word, but the surrounding golden light dimmed a lot. However, Bucky suddenly felt a burning sensation in his body. Mrs. Gao yelled violently, and the golden light burst out suddenly, causing Bucky's brain to buzz, and his body was in severe pain as if being ignited. At the same time, the 3 black air clusters also received the same impact, and immediately collapsed and disintegrated, which made Bucky even worse. The golden light and black air rebelled in his body together. Puff. Bucky spewed out a mouthful of dark red blood oozing from all 5 sense organs and 7 orifices. But fortunately, Bucky couldn't be killed in one shot, giving him a chance to give himself a healing shot to renew his life. And this was Madame Gao's last counterattack, and she had no strength to resist after that. System information. The dismantling of the unknown substance and the remnant soul of the evil spirit has been completed. Obtained epic level item components 4.0, legendary level item components 5, Seed of Air 4, Seed of Black Sky 3, Imprint of Mother Crane 1, Black Space Imprint 1. Mother Crane's Mark. The other Buckies are easy to understand. The legendary components in the imprint of Hei Kong are naturally left from a bite of Hei Kong's body. And according to Mrs. Gao's last words, it can also be speculated that she is not a true believer in Hei Kong, but because of the love of Wu Ji, she had to board the thief ship, so she does not have the seed of Hei Kong, and there will be a final that kind of performance. But what's up with the imprint of the Crane Mother? But Bucky didn't bother to carefully study the effects of the Black Sky Mark and the Crane Mother Mark. Instead, after stabilizing his figure again, he quickly flew to the location of Howard's villa. He also remotely took over the MTOD-12 Xiaopingtu, who had been lurking there for the first time. It didn't matter, but his heart trembled again. During the time he was delayed, Obadiah was going to be shot and collapsed. Not to mention Howard, Maria Hill and little Daisy were both pointed at gunpoint. Seeing Hill's desperate eyes and the frightened little guy, Bucky was instantly enraged, even more violent than entering a berserk state. This is his woman. This is his daughter. Then there was the scene after that. Bucky remotely controlled Xiaopingtu and directly swept the audience. But just when Bucky was still puzzled and wanted to kill Obadiah directly with his flat head, his body couldn't bear it anymore. Mrs. Gao's death blow caused her to use that chi, that she retained somehow, together with the black energy of the other 3 fingers, to explode in Bucky's body. Although Bucky immediately interrupted it with an electromagnetic short circuit, but still caused a lot of damage. And the damage of electromagnetic short circuit has become stronger with Bucky, and the damage has been higher. The superposition of the two directly reduced Bucky's health to less than 1/5. Moreover, the damage from chi and black energy is still a continuous dot. Bucky only had time to get a healing injection, and then he was busy with rescue. At this moment, the damage happened again. He had no choice but to receive 2 more therapeutic injections, and asked the system to quickly absorb the 2 remaining energies, so he could fix his body first. Only then did he spurt out a mouthful of blood, all of which were pitch black with icy shards. But fortunately, Bucky arrived in time, and made a thrilling pass at the last second, letting everyone out of danger. Although Howard was shot in the shoulder, and little Daisy was so frightened, she might have to seek counseling from a psychiatrist in the future. But there is no shortage of people, which is a blessing in misfortune. Bucky was supported by Hill, walked to Howard, and asked Hill to loosen the ropes that bound his hands for the other Maria and his nephew Tony. And he checked the wound on Howard's shoulder, which was considered a lucky penetrating wound, a matter of a healing needle. Maria and Tony's bomb vests. Howard didn't have time to ask Bucky what was going on, but asked Bucky to look at the bomb vest first. He knew that Bucky had a special posture for borrowing items, and he was afraid that Obadiah might have installed some hidden traps. I'll come first. The tape on the eldest nephew Tony's mouth was torn off, there was a red mark, and his mouth pouted. He stepped in front of Maria, pushed Bucky, who had just been handed over to Hill by the little guy, and walked away. It wasn't that he couldn't wait, but he wanted to try it himself first, and then dismantle it for Maria when it was all right. Although it's about tearing down things, no matter what to tear down, even Haikong's consciousness, Bucky is a teardown character, but he didn't stop his eldest nephew from being filial. Show off, waves turn on waves, the character of the eldest nephew is still no problem. Hey, can you do it? If you can't, don't be brave. If the world loses Mr. Tony's handsomeness and wisdom, do you know how much loss it is? The only thing is that he has a long mouth. Bucky patted his nephew on the shoulder and comforted him softly. Don't worry, I've defused more bombs than you've ever seen. Boom. In the end, he suddenly bluffed, and the eldest nephew jumped up in fright. I have never seen such a bad character. You don't have a mirror at home? While bickering with Tony, Bucky checked the bomb vest decently, and then put on a face of embarrassment. Is it really difficult? Tony, you have to be mentally prepared. Bucky said and patted Tony on the shoulder, which surprised him again. Then he saw a strange red and blue neon color flashing on his body, and then the bomb vest turned into a tattered vest, and Bucky took it directly down. Tony really didn't know how to describe this feeling of wanting to give the savior the middle finger, so he could only look up at the sky with the corners of his eyes and mouth twitching. By the way, what is your ability? I didn't expect you to be a superpower. It's amazing. Do you have any other tricks? Speaking of your designs, isn't it because of your superpower? Then I feel comfortable too much. Since the words of thanks were too much to say, the eldest nephew had no choice but to live up to his mouth. Tony. Maria was also removed from the bomb vest, and then she hugged her son and did not let go. Okay, Mom, I'm fine, I'm not hurt at all. You still care about your husband, he's the one who got shot. Seeing that his wife and children were fine, Howard himself recovered, and asked Bucky, what happened to you? You were the one who flew into the sky just now. The Hand, in fact, their people have also come here. All of them are on the periphery, but they all ran away when I came here. The ninjas of the Hand were able to root out all the shield agents guarding the surrounding area. Not only did they come here, but there were quite a few of them. It is estimated that the number of fighters killed here was 3 times that of Bucky. Not only that, but it seems that because they are all believers of Haikong was scared away, and the 4 fingers of the hands were scattered. They seem to have some kind of induction in the dark. When Bucky flew over, he happened to notice a group of ninjas scattered. But because of concern about the situation here, there is not a single finger left of the Hand Society, and now it can only be called the Hand Society, and Bucky temporarily ignores them. Has the Hand been in contact with that side in the dark? It should be. It's not that Bucky didn't think that the Hand would ask him to settle the accounts, but he didn't expect it to be so sudden. Why should they come one by one, boss? First came the bloggers, then Mrs. Gao, and finally Haikong will. I didn't expect that Hey Kong was too narrow-minded, killing him a dog, but his reaction was so big, he just studded him. Fortunately, Bucky was not completely unprepared, and he had predicted the worst, and the result was barely acceptable. Speaking of that, let's go over there to see something, and you can also call some people to clean the floor, and those shield agents who died should be properly settled. Hill, take care of little Daisy, the matter is not over yet. Tony, take care of your mother. Maria, you go to our safe house in Queens first. The two talked to Hill and Tony respectively. Howard put on the steel suit again, and Bucky also opened the wings of the Falcon's flying wings, and flew away without waiting for everyone to respond. Seeing the two bright lights flying farther and farther away, Hill and Tony were a little bit reconciled, but Maria and little Daisy really needed someone to take care of them, so they had no choice but to look away and take the little guy and Maria away from this one-night event. A place where so many nightmarish things happened. This is. Bucky and Howard didn't fly very far, and stopped in front of a minivan with a certain postal logo on the side of the road. The black minivan was not parked properly on the side of the road, but smoke was coming out of the gap in the hood, and it drove off the road crookedly. The car door was also opened, but the people inside did not run out, but all passed out, some foamed, some vomited, and they were all in black suits with weapons around their waists. Fortunately, you have installed a large number of cameras around the villa. They wanted to run away after Obadiah's accident. When I came here, I scanned all the nearby cameras. When I found something suspicious, I immediately took it down for them. Bucky firstly saw that this group of people had weapons on their bodies, and secondly, this car also had monitoring and monitoring equipment. This is a surveillance car, so of course they should be stopped directly. And the two of them went over to confirm that Bucky's guess was not wrong. This is the first weapon you gave me back then. Bucky pulled out the data cable from his wrist and connected it to the data interface of the monitoring equipment. The prosthetic eye glowed with a blue light, and a not-so-clear picture was played on the display screen. It was Obadiah who hit him with a pistol. That scene on Howard's forehead. Even if Obadiah succeeds, it won't be so wonderful to wait for his ending later. After the mantis catches the cicada and the oriole, Obadiah thinks he has calculated well, but he doesn't know that it is still a scene arranged for him by the conspirators. Howard also took out a mobile phone from a person, looked at the call log and said, "The record shows that after that is, when they left by phone, they already knew what happened here. But we are go to DC to have a look." The two flew to the airport of Howard's private jet. Although the steel suit had a speed of Mach 1.5, the Falcon's flying wing was only 400 kilometers per hour, and the plane was faster. I called Tricurve Wings, and Alexander Pierce was not there, and a large part of the members of Confirmed have made excuses to leave. The old boy is decisive. Howard would be the first to not believe that Obadiah could do such an extreme behavior without anyone instigating him behind the scenes and using some special means. And what can affect Obadiah, and what can make people from the Hand appear together? The first thing Howard and Bucky think of is naturally their old enemy. Naturally, Pierce has always been ruthless. He can't wait for Howard to die, and he can't wait for Bucky to catch him and continue to be ruthless. And he also has the strength and means to approach and offer Obadiah a tempting condition, but as expected, he is ready to stab a knife in the back. Pierce, who mastered S.H.I.E.L.D., naturally knew of the existence of the Hand, and after learning of the news that Bucky and the Hand had a grudge, he tried to hook up with the Hand. Bucky drank the single bud whiskey in the glass, took a long sigh of relief, wanted to dispel all the exhaustion of body and mind with this breath, but then sighed. Old things are really hard to deal with. Pierce's difficulty lies in the fact that if he is involved, if there is no solid evidence, it will cause turmoil within S.H.I.E.L.D., and even make the Hydra within it jump the wall in a hurry, causing huge damage. Howard has always been based on safety, screening members of S.H.I.E.L.D. bit by bit, investigating Pierce's details bit by bit, and planning bit by bit. He doesn't want his hard work. Peggy, the painstaking efforts of Duggan, Sousa and others were overturned. There are many moths in S.H.I.E.L.D., but Howard wouldn't destroy it directly. So he had to take this risk again and again, but in the end he still failed to catch Pierce. Old. Howard did worry too much. As he got older, he lost his determination to forge ahead. Moreover, Bucky has been helping him to open it up, and the project of the steel suit has distracted him too much. Even if he wants to, a super genius like him really can't resist the temptation to develop a masterpiece handed down from generation to generation. So Howard went to Washington, D.C., to the Tricurve Wing building, to sit at the headquarters. And it doesn't matter if Pierce runs away. This guy is shady enough, but too cowardly. In fact, It just happens to be convenient for Howard to quickly control the headquarters, at least not to cause chaos. This situation is not the most difficult to accept. As for Pierce and those who left and disappeared, I only hope that Fury can bring good news. After finishing speaking, Howard leaned back, closed his eyes and rested his mind. This night, he experienced the betrayal of his closest companions and friends. His wife and children were strapped with bombs, and he was shot in the shoulder. His body really couldn't take it anymore. Time is not forgiving. Even if he is 10 years younger, he will not be so physically and mentally exhausted. He doesn't want to move a finger. His mind is messed up, and he refuses to think on a physical level. Within 3 seconds, there was a slight snore. Bucky also came to a system sleep, and then looked at the harvest this time. The first is the mark of the black sky and the seed of the black sky. These two unlucky things exude black sky energy all the time. The black sky imprint is equivalent to an upgraded version of the black sky seed. Energy will also affect Bucky's spiritual will at all times. Fortunately, this thing will also emit energy into Bucky's body. So Bucky still used Hei Kong's money to spend him in vain, and now he has successfully disassembled all the imprints and seeds, and got orange legendary item components 5, and purple epic items 1-5. Then there is the Mother Crane mark that surprised Bucky a bit. Crane Mother's mark. Madame Gao's special mark made of her unique chi. The specific effect is unknown, please explore the use by yourself. Bucky has a slight impression of Crane Mother. She is a person, in a sense. Because it is said that she lived thousands of years because of the mysterious power of the Kunlun secret realm, she gave birth to many daughters, established a city in the Kunlun secret territory, and the Crane Mother Church. Regarding Mrs. Gao's background, Bucky has a vague impression. He doesn't know if it's Marvel's setting, or where he got it from. There is a setting that Mrs. Gao is a member of the Crane Mother Church, that is, the daughter of the Crane Mother. System. Disassemble the imprint of the Crane Mother. System information. Dismantling the imprint of the Mother of the Crane. The estimated time is 2 hours and 29 minutes. If Bucky guessed right, then he killed the daughter of the Mother of the Crane, and he has to rush to inform him. What kind of mission can that trigger, surrender or blood debt? Thinking of this, Bucky asked the system to dismantle this thing without hesitation, so as to avoid future troubles. After solving these, it is time to harvest. The enemies encountered this time are so dangerous, the rewards will naturally be correspondingly generous. System message. System information. Because you defeated all 5 leaders of the Hand Association, and repelled the highest existence of the Hand Association, Black Sky Beast, once, you completed the hand-cutting action of the mission, Destroy the Hand Association. Reward 5,000 experience points. Orange Legendary Random Item Box 1, Purple Epic Random Item Box 1. To trigger the follow-up task, Total Eradication, it is necessary to eliminate the senior cadres of the Hand, clean up its important industries, and let the name of the Hand become history. Remarks. Because you defeated the Black Sky Beast once, its hatred towards you has reached the highest value. If it comes again, it will definitely target you as the primary target. As the special mission item, Crane Mother's mark, is being disassembled, the special mission, Madame Gao's Last Wish, has been removed from the mission list, and you can find other trigger methods by yourself. Because you defeated Obadiah Stane, the Iron Man series of missions, The Betrayal of a Best Friend, is completed. Reward 3,000 experience points, Purple Epic Random Item Box 1. The experience value has reached the upgrade standard and is now upgraded. Character. James Buchanan Barnes. Level 9. Experience points, 2,339 thousandths. Free attribute points +1. Free feat points +1. Sure enough, harvest and pay are directly proportional. Looking at the harvest this time, Bucky immediately felt that all the troubles of the night were worth it. 1 Legend 2 Epic. Bucky looked at the 3 random item boxes in the equipment bar. It was really itchy, and he didn't care about being on the plane. He couldn't be so ritualistic. He just went to the bathroom to wash his face and wiped his face. A bottle of skin cream. System information. The random item box is being opened. Get Endurance Conversion Chi Type E, Endurance Conversion Chi Type E, and Weakness Detection. What the hell? That's it. Am I not the Emperor of Europe? When Bucky saw the things that came out of the box, the upturned corner of his mouth instantly turned into a downturn. I thought it was said that there would be something good out of the box, but in the end, I opened an advanced version of something I already had. Doesn't that mean that I only got a Type E, and the first 2 are useless? Bucky took a closer look at the description of the item, but was stunned again. Endurance Conversion Chi Type E, Purple epic, immortal, unique. A special abdominal prosthetic body. A synthetic bionic muscle created with mysterious oriental metaphysics combined with technology, which can convert endurance into special, chi. Since you have already implanted the prosthetic body stamina conversion chi type, no specific description of chi will be given. Accelerate the recovery speed of gas value by 15%, and reduce the consumption of gas value by 33%. When the gas value is full, the physical attribute +5, reaction +3, when the gas value is not full, the bonus will be cancelled. When entering the explosive gas state, physical attributes +5, reaction +3, armor +50, recover 0.5% of life per second. After implanting this prosthesis, no other muscle prosthesis can be implanted in the trunk. Endurance conversion chi type E. Orange legend, immortal, unique. A special frontal cortex prosthesis. A frontal cortex auxiliary prosthesis created with mysterious oriental metaphysics combined with technology, covering the prefrontal cortex with a special bionic cortex. When the gas value is full, reaction +3, composure +5. When the gas value is not enough, the bonus will be cancelled. When entering the explosive gas state, reaction +3, calmness +5, and the slowing effect at any time is enhanced by 5%. Weakness detection. Purple epic. The prosthetic eye plugin assists the prosthetic eye to perform faster intelligent learning and analysis and identification of the target's weakness, and the damage to the target's weakness is increased by 15%. That's it. Bucky carefully read the description of the item, and immediately felt comfortable. It turns out that although it is type 123, it is not the same thing. He suddenly thought it was a lung prosthesis before, and he hadn't noticed it yet. But now the frontal cortex, lungs, and abdomen. These are the upper, middle, and lower dantians. Do you really think of him as a cyber, condor hero? But whether it's metaphysics or punk black technology, it's easy to use. It's really easy to use. Type E, that is, lower dantian, adds more physicality without adding calmness, while Type E only adds reaction and calmness, and can still give a bonus when Bucky enters the state of explosive gas, although it is not doubled bonus, but neither of these will cost more gas. On the contrary, Type E also has the attribute of reducing consumption, that is, Bucky will become stronger and last longer. Weakness detection is also very good, increasing the damage to the weak point. Whether it is a big head or a small head, it is more deadly. System. Implant 3 new prosthetic bodies. Prosthetic body implanting. When Ba Ji saw that it was the prosthetic body modification of the frontal cortex, he was a bit worried, but he was relieved when he saw that it was explained that it was an auxiliary prosthetic organ. And objectively speaking, this is actually not his original brain, but the brain he occupied after time travel. Then it doesn't make any difference whether the brain is the original brain of the original body or the brain with a prosthetic body added. Again, hypocrisy does not make the prosthetic body stronger. There was a slight strangeness, and Bucky instantly felt more strength pouring out of his body, and he had more control over his body. And the huge experience points given by the 2 missions this time also allowed Bucky to upgrade again. Upgraded attribute points continue to point to intelligence attributes. Physical body 16, +8, movement 8, annihilation 7, fighting 8. Reaction 17, +9, pistol 7, assault 8, sword 7, technology 4, engineering 4, crafting 4. Intelligence 14, intrusion protocol 7, quick crack 7. Calm 19, +8, stealth 11, cold-blooded 6, HP, 283 340ths, +80. Gas value. 220 220ths, +40, RAM, 19 19ths. After Bucky adjusted to his upgraded and stronger body, the plane landed. In less than an hour, the 2 had arrived in Washington, D.C. Then drive to the Sanqui building. The 2 found nothing unusual here. Although it was midnight, it wasn't deserted, but it was much quieter. The agents working overtime were still busy in an orderly manner, and there seemed to be no problems. But in fact, there are quite a few agents, and there is a vague feeling that something is wrong. After all, suddenly so many people left for various reasons, and suddenly they couldn't be contacted. But they thought that maybe those colleagues were going to carry out some large-scale secret mission. Because of Pingping's strict information division management system, the agents quickly came up with various reasons. Then he routinely suppressed the doubts in his heart and focused on the work in front of him. Agents have always been like this, not asking about their own tasks, and not caring about their own affairs. Howard Stark, 10th level authorization number. Sir, the director has an order. There are special secrets in his office. he has blocked all authorization levels unless he personally confirms it. And Howard took Bucky, and called 2 trusted elite agents, a man and a woman, and when they came to the chief's office in Alexander Pierce, he saw 2 heavily armed special forces poking in front of the office door. The director does not have the authority to ban a 10th level authority. This is an illegal operation by Director Pierce. I now order you to leave immediately. Sorry, sir, it's the duty. However, the 2 guards were completely indifferent to Howard's words, and they were completely indifferent to Howard's words. They stared at Howard in a daze with their eyes flickering with danger. Superior. It's sizzling. Facing the 2 special forces members who seemed to be about to shoot at a disagreement, Howard and the 2 agents looked dignified, and the agent also put his hand on the holster around his waist. Bucky yawned. Then, an electric arc suddenly erupted from the bodies of the 2 special forces, and in a flash, the 2 special forces fell to the ground in a twitch. The hand, Obadiah. Bucky thought he didn't play enough this night. How could he still have the spare time to compete with the 2 young men? Too lazy to talk nonsense, just stare, and solve it with an electromagnetic short circuit. And many more. However, when Howard pushed the door open and wanted to go to Pierce's desk, Bucky stopped him. Then he pointed to the seat under the desk, pressure sensor. Then he pointed to the ceiling opposite the desk, hidden camera. Bucky has never turned off the detection mode of the prosthetic eye since he came to the Sanqui building, the home of the agents. Sure enough, a problem was discovered in Pierce's office. Lao Pai. This old Yinbi really never forgets Howard's hand. See what we can find on his computer. Howard nodded, then gestured for Bucky to look at Pierce's computer. Ah. Under the slightly surprised eyes of the 2 agents, Bucky pulled out the data cable from his wrist and directly connected it to the keyboard interface on the back of the main unit under the monitor. The prosthetic eye flickered with a slight blue light, and quickly shook his head at Howard. All the data has been destroyed. It should be a special program. Pierce has experts around him. Howard also hung up the mobile phone at this time. Pierce's home is also empty. I don't think there is any need to search. He must have made a plan for a similar situation. Then the next step. Howard said to the female agent with a strand of hair dyed burgundy on her forehead, Agent Hand, gather personnel according to this list, don't attract attention, and gather in the conference room. Yes, sir. Agent? Bucky is very sensitive to the word opponent now, but he suddenly remembered that the image of the female agent is not the enemy of the Hairline brothers later, Victoria Hand. Agent Paxton, you gather personnel according to this list, and then control important locations such as the arsenal and the power room, and then enter a state of blockade. Howard's command was determined, so that the 2 agents, who did not know all the truth, also focused on their mission. Bucky, let's go too, there's a lot of work to do tonight. Pierce didn't know where he went. This was actually within the expectations of the 2 of them. They came to his office just to hope that he would be negligent. But since this old man has installed all the bombs, the data in the computer has also been deleted. And presumably there will be no other omissions left. Now Howard can only quickly control the tricurved wing building, and then officially take over here, to prevent Pierce's absconding from having any impact on the shield. Then there are branches, offices, strongholds all over the beautiful country, and then all over the world. Howard has limited energy, and can only choose one of the 2 options of cleaning up the mess left by Pierce with all his strength, or tracking Pierce with all his strength. Where's Fury? I can't get in touch. Now I can only hope that they are just in a special situation, but they can still gain something. After talking for a long time, what the hell is Nick Fury doing? It all starts with the day Howard broke Bucky and Maria Hill together. To make a long story short, Bucky found that he and Howard had a big cognitive deviation. Howard had always been suspicious of Pierce's direct descendant, Nick Fury, and hoped that he could change his opinion. At least test Nick Fury, as well as Phil Coulson, Melinda May and others who were relatively close to him. Howard was skeptical, always thinking that Bucky had been intoxicated, but he still chose to believe Bucky's judgment. After several investigations in secret, he tried a little bit of probing. In short, it was the way of secret agents, which made Bucky feel tired watching it. But Bucky also thought that after he came to this world, he changed a lot, and found that there were too many plausible places with his spoiler posture, and it would be safer to try it out. Fortunately, the process was complicated, but the result was clear. Howard had verified the future Mayor Frankman's loyalty to S.H.I.E.L.D., and then found an opportunity to tell him everything. Nick Fury was naturally shocked by this, but Howard has been secretly investigating Pierce since he met Bucky. Apart from Bucky's empty words, he has more ironclad evidence. So Nick Fury also joined Howard's camp, and Pierce has been deceiving him, and he feels heartbroken, feeling that he can no longer trust anyone in the future. And he also accepted the task of secretly observing Pierce and helping to identify the true identity of the members of S.H.I.E.L.D. Recently, he was the one who had been secretly monitoring Pierce with people, but after Pierce lost contact, he also lost contact. But Ma Ya Fa Kexia is fine. He and the Hairline brothers, Iron Knight Melinda May, and John Garrett are still tracking Pierce, but they have encountered a storm and cannot be contacted for the time being. It seems that something strange has been mixed in the team? Not surprisingly, the villain in the future Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series, the experimenter of the first-generation Death Warrior project, clairvoyant John Garrett, has no organ failure due to serious injuries during the mission. He is still in his 30s. The backbone of S.H.I.E.L.D. and extremely loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. So where is Fury now? Fury is no longer on the mainland of the beautiful country, they are on the plane to Europe. Although Pierce's whereabouts are very secretive, he cannot escape the tracking of the future king of secret agents. Don't look at Fury's low performance in Team 2. The beating is called miserable, and he has to pretend to be dead, but that's just that Pierce has always pretended to be too good. He has preconceived and never doubted this seniors and mentors who have been kind to him. Now Fury regards Pierce as an enemy, and an enemy who played with his feelings. He also knows that this enemy is very powerful and needs him to deal with it with 120 points. The different attitude naturally leads to different results of actions. Fury was like the most powerful hound, biting Pierce's trace, and skillfully avoided the opponent's counter-reconnaissance. He even got the route of Pierce's private jet, but because Pierce was surrounded by a large number of armed men, he couldn't fight hard, and he didn't have time to call for support, so he could only continue to bite the opponent's tail first. But when he wanted to notify Howard, there was a communication problem. Nordic. Near Finland's northern border with Russia. New York is still at the tail end of summer, but the autumn wind is already bleak here. And then it rained again. Nick Fury led Phil Coulson, Melinda May and John Garrett on this cold rainy night, walking through a forest with deep feet and shallow feet. This is their third day away from homeland and their second day in Finland. Without the strong support of the local S.H.I.E.L.D. and not in an English-speaking country, Fury and the others had difficulty tracking Alexander Pierce directly to a higher level. But this will not trouble a few elite agents who have a lot of experience in performing missions overseas, let alone the future king of agents. But after leaving the last town, Fury and the others couldn't accurately judge the whereabouts of Pierce and his party. Because instead of going to the next human settlement, they took a speedboat across a lake. On the other side is a vast forest. The profession of agent is like a fish in water in the city, because the various skills trained by agents are aimed at people. Tracking in the forest requires a skilled hunter, or at least a fighter with senior woodland combat experience. Fortunately, it's not a big problem. Fury, who participated in the Vietnam War, happened to have a wealth of jungle combat postures. Fury led the people to easily find the route to continue tracking. Because it was not far into the forest, I saw a dirt road artificially opened, and the muddy road was covered with tire tracks. This not only did not make Fury happy, but made him frown. Pierce originally brought more than 30 heavily armed soldiers, some of whom were elites of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously, it's not that Pierce wants to hide in the deep mountains and old forests to be a primitive man, but there must be another mystery here. It is difficult for them to imagine what they will find. However, they didn't have to imagine for too long, they saw it directly. The fortress. That motherfucker bastard has a fortress. The four of them followed the muddy path and found a cement road, then passed through the woods and came to the foot of a mountain, near a European medieval castle located in a small lake. As for why the castle is in the forest, no one knows, but it doesn't matter to the four of them. The important thing is that the castle was transformed directly into a military fortress. There are patrol soldiers cruising around, and there are patrol boats in the lake. At the head of the only stone bridge leading to the castle, there are watchtowers and machine gun defense positions. Soldiers are stationed on the towers of the castle, and the searchlights are constantly shaking. Pierce really has a trick. On the surface, he is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. But behind his back, he has made such a big deal. Fury suddenly felt that he was not too wrong by being cheated. Sir, what do we do next? Now scout the situation outside, and then... Wait. Fury is angry, wishing to slap Pierce with shit words, but he doesn't think his anger can even out the gap in force between him and a military fortress. However, he had no intention of retreating. Because when they first set foot on the land of Finland, they reconnected with the headquarters. Howard Stark had already controlled the situation there, and after learning about their situation, he told them that they would send enough support. He has to wait for the reinforcements to come, and then follow the assault on the castle. He must personally capture the traitor Pierce. However, just as they retreated and returned to the forest, Nick Fury suddenly felt a chill without warning, which made his scalp tingle and his hairs stand on end. The powerful fighting was direct, and he instantly realized that there was an enemy. Be careful. Enemy attack. Puff. But Fury's movements were still a step slower. Just as he was about to dodge behind the tree, he heard the familiar gunshot of a suppressed pistol, and then felt his deltoid muscle go numb. He rushed to the ground, rolled over, and hid under the tree. The adrenaline soared so fast that he didn't care about the pain in his shoulder, but quickly took out his pistol. Boom. But then, a violent bright light, followed by a deafening explosion, made the eyes of him and the three subordinates go blank, and the ears were filled with tinnitus. Their enemies are obviously not the same, and they cooperate extremely well. Bucky. Fury, whose vision was blurred, saw a figure rushing towards him, and he had seen this black tight-fitting combat uniform, half-covered mask and goggles, fully armed image before. But he only had time to call out this sentence before being rushed in front of him by this tall and strong figure. There was only time to flash a thought. This blonde white man was not Bucky, and then he was strangled by a strong arm, and soon his brain became dizzy, and he fell into the darkness. Fury felt a burst of cold, shivered, and woke up slowly, feeling uncomfortable. Looking up, his hands were tied up by thick ropes, the whole body was suspended, and his toes could barely touch the ground. The same is true for Coulson, May, and Garrett around him. The foremost elite agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were easily wiped out, but Nick Fury was not ashamed. There was only that familiar image in his mind, and the cold and numb eyes of the owner of that image. Didn't Bucky say that he was the only one in the Winter Soldier project? Why are there more? More than one. This thought gave Nick Fury a chill, and Pierce obviously possessed an unknown power. Fry, my old friend. Fury looked around and looked at the stone-walled house. They should have been brought inside the castle. At this moment, he heard a familiar voice. The owner of the voice, he would be happy when he saw it before, but now he just gnashes his teeth. Pierce. But Fury remained calm, suppressing his anger in his heart, watching Pierce, who came with 3 cold and numb fighters. I didn't expect that we would meet in such a situation. What's so bad about the position of director of S.H.I.E.L.D. that makes you want to find another job? Is it because of the super fighters behind you? Just for such power? Fury, your only shortcoming is that your vision is too narrow. You only see things in S.H.I.E.L.D. And that's everything to you. But I'm different. I have a wider world. Find another job. S.H.I.E.L.D. In fact, I am not qualified to serve at all. I only saw you fleeing to this shitty place. Do you have a phone line here? Fury's words made Pierce's wrinkled old white skin instantly turn red. He didn't hate Fury, he was just a small character played around by him. He hated Bucky, who betrayed him and prevented him from continuing to be in vain, and Howard, who refused to die obediently. If it wasn't for these 2 people, why would he be in such a situation? He can't spare those 2 bastards. However, the little character in front of him is not useless. Fury, I can give you one last chance to join me in a greater cause and stop being deceived by the lies of S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay. Let me go first, let's have a good talk. Can. Hey, what the fuck are you doing to me? Just when Nick Fury was untied by 2 super fighters, he was allowed to struggle and dragged out. Another room in the castle. It is also a stone wall, but it is not an interrogation room, but a brightly lit research room. Inside, a researcher in a white coat was fiddling with a lot of gadgets on the table. They were all spy equipment found on the floor of Fury. This researcher is actually a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. From S.H.I.E.L.D. Hydra, and came here with Alexander Pierce. However, he is actually in the Weapon Research and Development Department, but S.H.I.E.L.D. is not half seawater and half flame, and S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra each have half. There are not too many official agents and employees in S.H.I.E.L.D. What Pierce can bring here at one time is even more limited. The researchers here are only 2 or 3 big cats and kittens. As long as it is scientific research, they are all in charge. So Fury and the others basically brought S.H.I.E.L.D. standard equipment, and this researcher was a bit novice. He's fiddling with Nick Fury's mobile phone right now. This is not equipped by S.H.I.E.L.D. And it is not a brand on the market, but there is no brand at all. It is a circle bigger than an old-fashioned big brick, with a metallic luster, and it is also very heavy. He fiddled with it, and found that the mobile phone seemed to have many close-fitting gaps, and it was not a hole. He was trying to find something to take this thing apart. Suddenly, he felt the mobile phone in his hand vibrate. Not a vibration, but a jitter. What's the situation? The researcher was puzzled for a while, and suddenly his eyes widened. He saw the mobile phone disassembled suddenly, and 6 metal mechanical legs like spider legs popped out from the back. This made him tremble with fright, and he threw the mobile phone, or what it was, directly onto the table. However, the 6 legs were not finished yet. The head of the mobile phone turned for a while, and a camera was flipped out. He felt like the camera was staring at him like an eye. But then nothing happened. After waiting for a few seconds, the researcher took courage, picked up the screwdriver curiously, walked over, poked his head, and poked the strange-looking thing. What the hell is this? What's going on again? Is it malfunctioning? However, at this moment, the researcher suddenly felt a whirlwind, and countless chaotic thoughts suddenly appeared in his mind. He didn't know what he was thinking, he only knew that he was thinking chaotically and disorderly. He suddenly had a lot of frenzy, and he suddenly felt heart-piercing restlessness. He wanted to vent the unspeakable madness overflowing his chest, but he couldn't find a target to vent. He could no longer bear the feeling of chaos and madness, and he tightened his grip on the screwdriver in his hand. What? With a frantic and twisted roar, he thrust the screwdriver into his eye. Puff. The blood splashed, but he didn't feel the pain, nor did he cry out in pain. Instead, he continued to roar hysterically, pulled out the screwdriver suddenly, and then inserted it back in. Boom. The roaring stopped abruptly, and the researcher fell to the ground on his back. Such a big movement naturally startled the soldiers guarding the door. He hurriedly opened the door to enter, and was instantly startled by this weird scene. It's sizzling. But just when he was about to use the walkie-talkie to warn him, an electric arc suddenly erupted on his body, and it disappeared in a flash, causing him to collapse to the ground instantly, foaming and twitching a few times, and he did not move. As for the mobile phone on the table, I don't know what to call it now. The 6 mechanical legs moved forward somewhat wobbly, and climbed to the edge of the table, but lost their balance and fell down. It hit the researcher's body, the wheel turned around, and turned into the sky. Fortunately, the joints of the mechanical legs flipped directly, and the feet turned to the ground again, continuing to crawl. Climb out the gate and wander aimlessly until you find a surveillance camera. Gadget found an inconspicuous corner, retracted the mechanical legs, and only kept the camera facing the surveillance camera. Underground of the castle. Different from the stone buildings on the ground, the underground has a unique cave. It is a steel barrier similar to the secret base of Baki, who was frozen in Siberia before. There's also a spacious lab here, similar to the one where Bucky was played with electric shock, with a huge brainwashing device in the middle. Nick Fury, who kept struggling, was held down by 2 super soldiers and bound to the chair of the brainwashing device. Fury didn't expect Pierce to be so insane. He didn't even follow the most basic routines and procedures, and directly wanted to brainwash him simply and rudely. Fuck. You brainwashed me and turned into a walking dead like that. What good does it do you? Lao Tzu's Black Eagle is very different. You old white man fell in love with it? Those strong men can't satisfy you? Pierce didn't shut Fury's mouth. He needed to see someone like this now. He wanted to kill him, but he had no choice but to bark like a wild dog. This helps him relieve stress. How could it be? Fury, I am so optimistic about you. How could I turn you into a walking dead who only knows how to listen to the machine? Do you only know Whitehall? Which Whitehall in Mojafok is all the hall of white pigs? Daniel Whitehall, a genius doctor during World War E. But he is a doctor who focuses on death. He specializes in how to make people endure extreme pain without dying. He invented a very interesting brainwashing experiment. After I got this information, I gave it to Dr. Zola, and he improved the brainwashing device. Whitehall, Zola, the names that popped out of Pierce one after another made the pupils of the cursing Fury shrink. At this time, a green head suddenly appeared on the leftmost monitor of the brainwashing device, a strange man with round eyes, and suddenly said in a very disdainful, even disgusting tone, Pierce, you didn't say that the brainwashing target is a mudboy. Which white-skinned bastard are you, motherfuck? Come on, Zola, you are just a Swiss. Oh, look at me, Fury. Let me introduce you. This is Dr. Zola. It's also the owner here, Mr. Pierce. Fury, who seemed to be furious, immediately put the name Zola on his seat. He also found that the strange green head didn't seem to take Pierce seriously. Dr. Zola, the remnant of Hydra during World War E, is the real owner here? What about others? The corners of Pierce's eyes did twitch slightly, and he was much angrier than Fury when he heard Brother Mud. But what Dr. Zola said seemed to be true, and Pierce didn't refute it. But his expression changed several times with a slightly gloomy expression. Dr. Zola, let's continue our experiment. Dr. Zola? However, Pierce tried not to have an attack, but wanted to get rid of Fury first, but at this moment, he saw a flash of red and blue neon blocks on Dr. Zola's screen, and then suddenly turned off. What's the situation? Bucky couldn't sit still as soon as Howard Stark took control of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. He came here just to guard against the lurking Hydra plotting against Howard. He was here as a personal bodyguard, and he couldn't and didn't want to intervene in the affairs of S.H.I.E.L.D. But when Howard was in control and surrounded by his own people, Bucky had nothing to do. He was in a hurry to go back to see Maria Hill and little Daisy. The little guy was frightened and needed to be comforted, so that he wouldn't be really scared. However, at this time, Howard received a summons from Nick Fury. They are fine, but temporarily lost contact. They did not lose Alexander Pierce, they are still tracking, and have arrived in Finland. Unable to sit still, Bucky sat down again in an instant. It doesn't matter about other things, even if Dr. Banner came back suddenly, as long as he didn't turn into Hulk and rush into Brooklyn, he wouldn't bother to care. But this is Hydra, Pierce, the one Bucky gnashes his teeth with hatred whenever he thinks about it. This obsession that he has had since time travel, if he doesn't get rid of it, his thoughts are really not clear. So Bucky just called Hill and the little guy. Hearing the little guy's aggrieved voice, he felt uncomfortable for a while, but he still gritted his teeth and got on the supersonic plane to Finland. And now that Fury has restored communication, it won't be hard for Bucky to find them again. Fury was carrying a gadget that Bucky made, the big brick mobile phone. After Bucky created Little D in Dubai, he also made reference to Xiaoping too. Although the small flat head produced by the system has no real design drawings and cannot be disassembled to analyze its principles, it is still an object of thought and observation. Let's make the simplest one first. That is to say, there are 6 mechanical legs that can be retracted, remote control, and the simplest functions such as cameras. But the existing technology can only move such a small thing, but it doesn't have much power output. But this is enough for Bucky. He only needs a remote control and a camera. Where there is a camera, Bucky can control and cast the quick cracking skills. So there was the previous scene. Bucky actually just got off the plane and just wanted to contact Fury and see where they were. But after connecting to the camera, it was discovered that it was a white coat fiddling with. Judging by the method of elimination, it is obviously not that this thing is malfunctioning, and then Nick Fury found a researcher and asked him to help take a look. Well, it was actually Bucky who saw the Hydra logo on the white coat. Pierce added so many obstacles to Bucky, Bucky couldn't see this thing, and directly gave this white coat a cyber psychosis. After being killed by the white coat, Bucky was a little worried again. Something happened to Fury and the others, but he was locked up here. It doesn't matter if he has a flat head, there is no place to lock him up, but for this extreme simplified version, he can only go 2 steps, nothing else can be done. Fortunately, there was a guard outside who helped Bucky open the door, but was knocked over by Bucky's electromagnetic short circuit. Then Bucky controlled the little thing and slipped out, but he didn't know what to do. This little thing that can only crawl, it's a matter of whoever comes. Fortunately, before anyone found out, Bucky found a camera, turned the gadget back into a phone, and then controlled the camera here. However, following Bucky's expectations, something extremely bizarre happened. He didn't find the surveillance equipment he expected to connect all the cameras here. Instead, they discovered a data source with a vast amount of information. There's a supercomputer here. Bucky was extremely curious for a moment, and followed the data line to find it, but when he touched the data, he found that the data was not any programming language he was familiar with. Maybe it's Hydra's black technology, which is different from any mainstream computer language, but it's not a big problem. Anyway, Bucky came to find Nick Fury and the others. However, at this moment, he suddenly discovered that the data began to move rapidly, and seemed to lock him, along the path he had found, and transmit a large amount of data in turn. With a thought, Bucky chose to accept the data. Then the transmitted data is hacked. Of course, it wasn't that Bucky's personal terminal, network access warehouse, was hacked, and Cyberpunk's black technology was hacked, so it's okay. Isn't this the base of Hydra but the base of aliens? It was just a virtual system that Bucky made to see what the other party wanted to do. And sure enough, Bucky didn't know the other party's programming language, but the other party was very familiar with mainstream assembly language, BASIC and C, and directly began to invade the virtual system. And this also allowed Bucky to see the conversion process of the other party's data, so that the network access warehouse deciphered the other party's language in reverse, and reversed the other party's object code into source code, so as to get a glimpse of the original appearance of the other party's program. Just when the other party controlled the virtual system and was about to mine data, the virtual system collapsed without warning. Then a lot of messy and redundant data, computer viruses, logic bombs, and hacking programs were reverse transmitted, and they were all thrown over. The opponent seemed to be very good at intrusion, but when he found out that the opponent also had the same technical ability, and then played against him, he was a little at a loss, as if he had no such experience. Although he quickly deleted the data transmitted by Bucky, it was easy for Bucky to touch his system. Yes, the other party, let alone Bucky, has a built-in firewall in the hardware and has set up multiple protections. He doesn't even have a firewall. The other party seemed to be an MMA fighting master. No, at most he was a street hooligan. Bucky found that the other party's calculation ability was not enough at all. The Bucky he was fighting with was neither a fighter nor a hooligan, but a Terminator with a Vulcan cannon in his hand. He lets Bucky backdoor into his system without resistance. Then insert decisively and forcefully. That's it. Where is it? Bucky typed along the network cable and touched the other party's system. He just wanted to say something, but suddenly found that the other party's system was not right, very wrong. What appeared before his eyes was not the desktop of any kind of operating system, but a space. Like the Matrix, in the dark, a data stream composed of zeros and ones, or a piece of code, constitutes a space. And in this space, there is nothing else, only a strange-looking big head with small round glasses. Ah, you have a comparison. It's Tommy, you bastard. When Bucky saw this big head, he blurted out a sentence of fragrance, and it was not just ordinary surprise, but an instant outburst of rage. Whether it was him or the original body, this image was all too familiar. Who are you, or what are you? Why are you able to face me like this? But the big head was confused with panic, and a hint of curiosity. But Ben didn't know which onion Bucky was. Affected by the memory of the original body, and the experience when he first traveled here, Bucky hated two people the most in his life. One is Alexander Pierce, who repeatedly whitewashed him, and the other is Arnim Zola, who allowed Pierce to have the conditions to whitewash him. Hearing that Zola didn't know who he was at all, a string in Bucky's mind instantly collapsed. You saw off my arm, played with my body, f***cked my brain, and asked me who I am. I will let you know who I am. In a fit of rage, Bucky didn't directly physically destroy the opponent's mainframe with an electromagnetic short circuit. Then he is cheap. And this is an artificial intelligence. When Bucky and Howard can only research artificial mental retardation, he is an independent individual with intelligence existing in the computer. Although I don't know why Dr. Zola's hardware is so backward, and his computing power is so slow, he doesn't upgrade himself, but as long as he knows that he is a bad brother. Bucky begins dissecting Dr. Zola's compiler while sabotaging his system. Copy a piece of source code, embed a piece of code in it, and then destroy the original code. Just like a blunt knife cutting through flesh, it hurt Zora bit by bit. Stop. Please stop. We can talk. Why are we so aggressive? Aren't we the same kind? God see you. How wrong Zola felt. He really doesn't know who the other party is at all, and he can't analyze any code of the other party at all. In his opinion, the other party is not any language or algorithm he knows at all. The other party is just like him, a super genius who created a unique soul algorithm. The other party seemed to recognize the image set by his code. But in his eyes, the other party is simply a cloud of chaotic and boiling mist, roaring madly at him, pouring inexplicable chaotic and disorderly data into him, but it seems to represent some kind of advanced knowledge. And he has no power to resist all of this. The opponent's calculation speed is a gap that he can't calculate. The regret of Zola's life is the flaw in his algorithm, which caused him to be solidified in this giant computer that was originally recorded into his soul. He even tried copying all his information to another computer, even though it would put him at risk of self-contradictory self-knockout, but the program on the other computer would not work at all. Not to mention another Zola, not even another brand new smart program. This makes the current Zola always think that he is Dr. Zola. His soul has been successfully transferred and transformed into a digital soul, and he is still the only one. He is proud of this, but also lost because of this, because he has not yet escaped the shackles of his body. He is still imprisoned, but from his short and weak human body that is always ridiculed by others, he will now be despise obsolete old computers. Therefore, Zola's unbelievable calculation speed was completely unmatched by him. He begged for mercy, he was angry, he was hysterical, he even wanted to destroy himself, to overload his body. But all resistance was in vain. He could only watch the other party destroy him little by little, and watch himself disintegrate little by little. Until his mind crumbles as the program disintegrates. Until he left only the last core code, the core formula of his soul algorithm. The last bit of his presence. But suddenly, in addition to his core formula, there is an additional code, more and more. Zola, who was on the verge of darkness and sinking, gradually regained consciousness and the ability to think. How his code was destroyed was added back. He seemed to have fallen into a coma. No, he was on the abyss of hell. He jumped into the endless abyss and was dragged back. It's you, Sergeant Barnes. How is this possible? Zola came back to his senses, and found that his digital virtual space had changed, and became composed of red and blue data streams, which made his still green head look a little out of place. And in front of him was no longer a boiling fog of chaos, but a person he was very familiar with. The second super soldier he personally transformed, James Buchanan Barnes. Old thing, is it surprising? How? I can only say that everything is possible, but, putting aside grievances, now I want to talk about you. Well, what do you think of me? Zola noticed the key word, put aside grievances. So no matter whether the person opposite is Sergeant Barnes or not, he has a certain interest in him and wants to talk about it. Whether it's the spirit of a scientist who is dying after hearing the truth, or wanting to live, Zola followed the other party's meaning and asked. I want to say that you are worthy of being one of the greatest scientists during World War E. Although you didn't use your genius brain to benefit all mankind, I couldn't fully understand your core source code for a while, only a little bit of superficial understanding. That's amazing too. How did you acquire such abilities? Are you also a digitized soul? That's a good question. Bucky said to himself, I don't know what kind of soul I am, but a better question is, do you want to know why you were fixed on your hardware? You know? Zola was very strange. Didn't you say that you only understand a little? If you can't understand your core program, it doesn't mean you can't see your problem. It's like a doctor doesn't know what a cold is, but can easily tell that a person has a cold. Can you tell me? Because you and your hardware are one. You are not only your digital soul, you are also that pile of junk. Your core program is amazing. He really created you as a soul, and from the beginning of your birth, you were considered to be Zora, an independent individual with a soul and a body. Your soul has undergone self-adjustment, and your firmware the information is entered. You are like a human being, thinking that this is your unique body. Bucky is really not lying. When he completely reproduced Zola's code and came into contact with his core code, although he couldn't understand the part representing the soul, the firmware information entered in it could also be detected. The information of his hardware was detected, so it was checked. A word to wake up the dreamer. This is indeed a problem that Zola subconsciously ignores. He never thought about it, but now he suddenly understands. I see. Then what should I do? I can't modify my core program. That contradicts my logic, and that would be tantamount to suicide for me. Sergeant Barnes, since you were willing to, I said, are you willing to help me? You can say whatever you want. Of course I'd like to help you, but it's not you. Bucky pointed to Zola, and then pointed to his side, where red and blue neon colors suddenly flashed, and then a small red and blue pair of glasses appeared. Head, but this you. As for you in green, I'm sorry. I just don't think it's enough to let you die once. I just want you to die one more time. What? You? Don't. Dr. Zola, let's continue our experiment. Dr. Zola. Pierce saw that the green head suddenly disappeared on the display screen showing Dr. Zola's head, followed by a flash of red and blue neon color blocks, and Dr. Zola reappeared, but it was also changed to red and blue. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. Nothing, some small problems, Pierce, the resources you promised me will be delivered as soon as possible. On the way, let's finish the experiment first, Dr. Zola? Pierce always felt a little bit wrong. First of all, it was always slow, as if he was getting old, so it was very wrong, but considering that Zola was already old, and his equipment had been in operation for decades, is this finally going to be scrapped? Tisk. Although he also thought about scrapping this collaborator as soon as possible, so that he could take Zola's resources as his own. Although Zola took the initiative to provide help when he encountered difficulties, he was not really desperate, but just coveted Zola's resources and wanted to give him a bite, so he endured his arbitrariness. But after all, super soldiers, brainwashing programs, etc. are now pointing at Zola. Pierce has to wait until he gets Zola's core secrets, and secretly finds a scientist to control Zola, and then be used by him in turn. Now is not the time to turn heads, nor is it time for Zola to have problems. Brainwashing program. Well, we'll start right away. Fortunately, Zola only delayed for a while before getting to the point. The researchers under his command are not 2 or 3 big cats and kittens brought by Pierce, but those hydras who have followed him since World War E, and in the Paperclip project, after he joined the Allied forces, He lurked and continued to develop until he completed his soul transfer plan and developed this place into his stronghold. Those old people also absorbed many newcomers in those years. Zola ordered his researchers to hang a projector screen in front of the yelling Nick Fury. A projector rose behind Fury, and 2 electrode devices automatically fixed Fury's head so that he could not struggle. Although Zora himself is a bunch of outdated junk, his other scientific instruments are all state-of-the-art. The researchers used a special tool to prop open one of Fury's eyes. Then special medicine was dripped into his eyes, and his mouthguard was plugged. Just as Fury wanted to throw up his mouthguard and continued to yell, he felt a pinprick pain in both temples. The projection screen in front of him also began to flash various images continuously and rapidly. A voice gradually sounded in his ear, "Agent Fury, sorry for making you suffer like this. There's no need to put on airs, fucking fark, huh?" Fury suddenly discovered that although the pain from the electric shock was severe, it was not unbearable, and the owner of the voice was also vaguely appearing on the projection screen. Bucky Barnes. Seeing a familiar handsome face, Fury almost cried out in fright. Then I found that only he could see it. I have controlled Dr. Zola, but the force in this fortress is very strong and there are many people, and I am still a long way from there. I can only use this method to send you a message. I hope you cooperate with me. Is it possible? Feeling unbelievable, or simply absurd, Fury is in a crisis of trust because of Pierce's betrayal, and he is no longer willing to trust anyone. His first reaction is that Majestic Falca's enemy is using it to confuse him. He must not be fooled by such ghostly tricks. You can't give in. However, Fury found that Bucky on the projection screen was still talking, but the electric shock had stopped. I don't know how long it took, but it should have been extremely long, because he already felt hungry. But there is no sign of being controlled. How do you think? He is still a person with free will. Then he suddenly felt his eyes loosen. It turned out that a researcher helped him remove the device that supported his eyelids, and the electric shock device that fixed his head was also released. Only then did he realize that he had a needle inserted in his hand and was receiving an infusion. He was very thirsty, but his body showed no sign of dehydration. Is it true? Fury is still a little unbelievable. Although he knows that Bucky has something magical and somehow has a supernatural peculiarity, can it be so magical? Can you do this thousands of miles away? However, the door of the laboratory opened at this time, and Pierce, who took off his suit jacket and only wore a suit vest, walked in. Suppressing the doubts in his heart, Fury pretended to be blank. Pierce walked up to Fury and took a closer look. Pia. Backhand swung a big ear scraper. Beat Fury furious, but pretend to be insensitive. Pierce took a closer look, nodded in satisfaction, took out a small notebook from his pocket, turned to a page, put on his gold-rimmed glasses, and read in jerky German, Desire, Corrosion, 66, Chuyang, Ember, 9, Kindness, Homeland, 7, Engine. What the hell is fuck? Oh, that Bucky's head said it, it was a brainwashed word to control him. Nick Fury. Willing to obey. So Fury stared blankly at Pierce, and replied coldly and mechanically. Pierce, my job is done. I don't know why you want such a nigger, but now he is yours. Please let him disappear from my eyes, thank you. Dr. Zola's voice sounded in his ears. Niggers can't stimulate Fury's heart. He's not that expensive, he's just curious. How did Bucky do it? Come with me. Pierce twitched his eyes slightly, nodded to Zola on the screen, and left with Fury. When did Howard Stark and Bucky Barnes contact you? When did you know everything? Unsuspecting of him, Pierce took Fury to his somewhat modest office and began to question him about his experiences. Fury also has a lot of words, obeys his words, and answers all questions. He didn't know the other secrets of Howard and Bucky. He only knew about Pierce, S.H.I.E.L.D., and Hydra. So Pierce got the information, it was all after the fact. Fury is still the executor of the mission, not the planner of the plan. Pierce tossing him has other functions besides venting. In fact, there are other functions. Although Fury is not the leader, he is not a pawn either. He is an elite that Pierce is very optimistic about. If this is not the case, he will definitely be an elite with great achievements in S.H.I.E.L.D. in the future. And he is lacking such a tactical commander to help him command the soldiers below. Pierce himself is a leader who is good at plotting and maneuvering, but he is not a general who is good at fighting. And isn't Fury just the best candidate to come to your door? Not only Fury, Phil Coulson, Melinda May, John Garrett, he intends to brainwash and control them so that he will have a team with a soul. And use people loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. To fight people from S.H.I.E.L.D. Thinking about the expressions of those two bastards Howard and Bucky, Pierce felt a sense of emotion. Dr. Zola, this is the last one. No, Mr. Pierce, it's not. Oh. That was the one before. Okay. In the brainwashing room, after Nick Fury, Phil Coulson, and Melinda May, Alexander Pierce asked two super fighters to follow John Garrett, and let Zola, who somehow changed into a strange red and blue color doctor, brainwashed. He heard Dr. Zola tell him, no, Mr. Pierce, let me help you recall that when you were in trouble, I provided you with a shelter, I gave you a new super soldier, and I helped you brainwash these people. If you take all this as charity, please speak up. Otherwise, please complete our agreement, mutual assistance and mutual benefit, equal value exchange. When can I see the materials and equipment you promised me? Why be so impatient, dear Annam? Pierce held the hand behind his back firmly, but smiled like a spring breeze. I promised you that I will naturally deliver as much, but there will be a slight delay. This is exactly what I want to tell you. I was supposed to deliver today. There were some problems with the first batch of supplies that arrived, and I suspect that someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. has found them again. So in order to strengthen the guard, I need more people, Dr. Zola. We are all in the same boat now, we should understand each other, help each other, and tide over the difficulties together. Put people down, and then you can do things, at least make yourself useful. Pierce, don't even think about using me to block your enemy's bullets, you will pay for it. Pierce's face turned red for a moment, and he tried his best to just stare at Zola on the screen, and left without saying a word. I can't stand that damned midget anymore. Goblin. Slug. Pierce did not go back to his office, but came to a storage room in the area Zola had vacated for him. In addition to him, there was a white coat and a special forces member. This was his confidant. The best scientists and combat specialists on hand. He spread evil fire in front of his two subordinates, but he could only lower his voice. He could only ensure that the room was not being monitored, but he was still afraid that the walls had ears. He is really regretful now. He shouldn't easily accept Zola's helping hand. He has nowhere to go, it's just that he has long coveted Zola and wants to take everything for himself. However, the plan of the dove to occupy the magpie's nest is not going smoothly. Not only has to bear Zola's increasingly intensified cynicism, but also the action of finding Zola's location is blocked everywhere, and there is no progress. He even failed to appease Zola. The batch of materials he raised and the equipment that was difficult to obtain were even more difficult in his current situation, but something went wrong during the transportation, and the convoy was looted and the people were missing. This made him more unhappy, more irritable, and vaguely felt uneasy. He desperately needed to get back the feeling of being in control again. Sir, I still haven't been able to find any way to connect to Dr. Zola. I need a computer that Dr. Zola can directly connect to, but in this place where his monitoring equipment is almost everywhere. Sir, it will take more time to observe the movement of Dr. Zola's personnel and speculate on his location. Pierce gritted his teeth. The corners of his eyes kept twitching, and the veins on his forehead popped out. He was already on the verge of breaking out. Is there no good news at all? On the S.H.I.E.L.D. side, we have disseminated some black information about S.H.I.E.L.D. to the outside world, and also exposed some lists of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents lurking in various places, which is enough to divert their attention. Then our convoy has been ransacked. Besides Fury, there must be other people eyeing me. You must strengthen your guard and protect me to evacuate at any time. Pierce explained a few words to the two subordinates. It was nothing more than the leader's order to kill the subordinates, and if they had difficulties, they would be tough, and if they couldn't get up, they would die. Difficulty. If an enemy wants to invade here, how can he find the most secret place here? After dismissing the two men, Pierce called Fury, who was leading Coulson and May, to train a team of elite special forces. Create a little chaos, a little destruction, and see what people here care about most. Pierce was taken aback when he heard that, for such a simple sentence and a solution, none of the group of people under him could come up with it. If you were asked to come, what would you do? Find the main power supply line here and create a power failure. Okay, great. Pierce rubbed his hands excitedly, listening to Fury's plan. He had already begun to imagine Zola's surprise when he stood in front of Zola's screen. He's going to smash the monitor that shows his ugly head with his own hands. A day later, John Garrett is still being brainwashed. Pierce led his men, a team of elite soldiers he brought from S.H.I.E.L.D., and a scientist in a white coat, to the forest outside the castle, where a helicopter was parked in a clearing. At this time, the brightly lit castle suddenly fell into darkness, and then the red emergency lights came on. This lasted for a long time, and when the castle was turned on again, the walkie-talkie in Pierce's hand also rang. Sir, we have found the suspected location of Dr. Zola, in the deepest part of the ground. Continue to act find a way to enter, and others, start to create chaos. Let's see if the super soldier Zola gave me is really given to me. Then there was a sudden burst of gunfire in the castle, and even the sound of explosions from time to time, which lasted for a long time. After an unknown amount of time, just as Pierce was about to see through, the gunshots and explosions stopped abruptly. Sir, we breached the door to Zora's room, and we're already with his host. Very good. Now, connect to the line, I want to see for myself. Pierce couldn't wait to get the white coat and asked him to fiddle with the monitoring equipment in front of him. After a while, the monitoring equipment was connected to the circuit in the castle, and a picture appeared on the display screen. Nick Fury took Coulson, May, Garrett, and a few Special Forces members. Everyone was wounded, and there were many soldiers and white coats lying around. They were in a well-lit computer room, surrounded by old-fashioned large computers, and the face of Dr. Zola was displayed on the monitor in the middle. Pierce. Is it you? You ungrateful villain. Is this how you repay your benefactor? Bah. Zola. Let's not talk about each other. How dare you say that you have the same idea as me? You are not the one who wants to swallow me up and let me be your dog. Ha. So what now? Fury, empty that place for me, and move Zola in front of me. I'll see how he is still proud of me. Pierce. I would rather die than submit to an ungrateful and despicable villain like you. Outside the castle, Dr. Zola's entire computer set was directly moved out, connected to a temporary power supply, and after starting up, Alexander Pierce, who had a triumphant expression on his face, instantly cursed with his unique electronic voice. Pierce was not in pain or itching at all, but it was a little strange. He asked Nick Fury, who smelled of gunpowder and was also injured, the 4 superfighters are really all right? Yeezer, you have always obeyed. HMPH, Zola, now I really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Bah. Despicable villain, I will never die with you. What? For Zola's defeated dog barking wildly, Pierce felt nothing but joy in his heart. If such an enemy really spat at him, he would resign himself to it. What do you have to keep me alive? What else do you have? Bastard. I curse you, %. #at. After Zola scolded for a while, all kinds of Swiss and German slang that Pierce couldn't understand. He didn't mean to stop at all. Pierce obviously underestimated the vocabulary of a digital soul. Can you stop for a while? Who turned off his horn? The most powerful scientist under Pierce trotted over. He could do nothing else. He could still turn the phone on and turn off the horn. Soon, Zola on the display could only move her mouth without making a sound. Can he still hear me? Received a nod from his subordinates, Pierce smiled slightly at Zola. Dr. Zola. Why are you so angry? This shows that you are only a scientist, not suitable for intrigue. Then why don't you continue to be your scientist with my support? I guarantee that, like the Red Skull, you will be regarded as the chief scientist. In terms of scientific research, I will fully support you unconditionally. The only difference between this and after you left the Red Skull is that you don't have to care about any other things other than scientific research. Isn't it much better than you worrying about all kinds of supplies? Pierce, you thief. Thief. Robber. Beast. Garbage. I want to fight you forever. The sudden recovery of Zola's yelling and scolding made Pierce startled, and he gave his chief scientist a hard look. If you can't do such a thing well, why should I keep you? The scientist was also taken aback, but it's just a matter of turning off the horn. No problem? Don't touch me, you idiot. Listen to me, get rid of the bastard Pierce. No movement. Come on, Zora, do you think this is still your place? Pierce was indeed taken aback, but he was relieved to find that nothing happened around him. Maybe it was just a glitch. Click. But suddenly, Pierce felt something hard on his head, and there was a sound of pulling the hammer away. This is indeed still his territory, Majafake, sir. Pierce turned to look at the owner of the pistol with a look of disbelief. Fry? Zola. This is all your plan. Sacrifice so many people, just for this. You are also exposed to my gun. How can you win? After Pierce finished speaking, the special forces behind him raised their guns on Zola's computer. Bah. Do you think I am willing? I took the initiative to hit your idea. Not you. Would I face this? This is at least better than being controlled by you. So, what now? Pierce didn't expect such a result, but seeing that no more people came out from the castle, and the super soldier didn't respond, he was slightly relieved. Although he suffered a loss for both sides, he had lost a lot of people when he rushed to Zola's position in the castle, but at least he hadn't lost all of them, and at least the 4 superfighters were still his. Is that really the case? Get out, Pierce, get out of my sight. I'll treat it like a dog bit me, and I'll never see you again. I want all my people to evacuate safely, and you also need to give me 4 super soldier serums, and all the hypnosis and brainwashing procedures. Bah. You think so beautifully. 3 serums, next time we meet, we will be enemies. Make a deal. After some haggling, the 2 parties finally reached an agreement. Zola promised not to embarrass Pierce, returned him 3 serums, and settled the matter. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and they became sworn enemies. There was no winner, and Pierce, who boarded the helicopter and left, also regretted it. Was he too eager? Maybe if you bear with Dr. Zola a little longer, you will have a better chance of winning? Pierce left first, then Zola returned to the castle, and then let Pierce's men leave with the serum, so as to ensure the safety of both parties. However, just as Pierce's helicopter flew away, the 4 super soldiers suddenly raised their guns. It's sizzling. However, some of Pierce's men first had arcs flickering or green mist appeared, and a dozen fell down in an instant, and finally a man suddenly went crazy, raised his gun and shot at his companions indiscriminately. Cooperating with 4 assault super soldiers, when Pierce's men were caught off guard, they wiped out the opponent directly. Dr. Zola? Sergeant Barnes? Nick Fury and Coulson were also a little surprised. Bucky didn't tell them about this episode. In fact, Bucky told them very limited. He only said that everything was arranged and let them cooperate with the acting. When the time comes, they will know how to do it. Fortunately, they also acted like this on weekdays, and they have long been used to it, so they took Pierce's men and 4 super fighters to assault Dr. Zola's lair. After causing a lot of casualties, Dr. Zola was controlled, and then there was the previous scene. Wait a moment, prepare to welcome Pierce back first. At the same time Zola said this, Pierce suddenly felt his body tilted. Hey! Why are you turning around? Because I'm going home, Pierce. Hearing the driver's words about going home in Russian, the familiar and magnetic voice, but the unfamiliar and playful tone, Pierce's nerves that had just been relaxed immediately tensed up. Who are you? I heard that you have been thinking about me, but you can't tell who I am. This is Bucky. The driver took off his helmet and towed mirror, and turned around and gave Pierce a flashing emoji. It's you. Pierce felt a chill in his heart when he saw the face that he could dream of. The other party's cold eyes that suppressed the hysterical madness made him feel as if he was suddenly thrown into the ice and snow. Pierce, in fact, I miss you very much, and I will never forget you. I miss you so much that I can't sleep at night. I always dream of you in my dreams. Now this expression. Seeing Pierce's expression, Bucky felt unprecedented pleasure. That's it. This expression of uncontrollable panic and despair. It's not in vain that he wasted so much effort. Comfortable, completely comfortable. Impossible, this is impossible. Why is it like this? Alexander Pierce was still sitting in the helicopter, surrounded by and facing his last 4 bodyguards. All 4 of them were unconscious, covered in vomit, and vomited all over him, but he didn't respond, just murmured with dull eyes, mumbling to himself. The helicopter returned the same way and stopped at the original position, but there were no living people here, only Zola's computer group was still here. Hey, old pie, it's time to stop, why don't you come down? The familiar voice and the unfamiliar joking tone made Pierce tremble all over, and when he came back to his senses, he saw a handsome face that he had been thinking about day and night before, but now he didn't even see it. He held his head tightly with his hands, feeling that this was a lucid dream. He is still in a nightmare, but he doesn't know how to wake up. Regardless of Pierce's feelings, Bucky pulled him out of the helicopter, pinched his nose in disgust and said, Look at you, I don't even say a word about airsickness, although I don't have medicine, but I can do physical therapy. Why? Why is it like this, Sergeant Barnes? Let me understand if I lose you. Pierce stared at Bucky with a complex expression that made Bucky's skin crawl. Okay. I'm only telling you about this. Actually, I'm not Bucky Barnes, I'm a Spartan Master Chief of the Andromeda Expeditionary Force. I strayed into a black hole during the space war and passed through the quantum channel. The mind was connected with Bucky Barnes, and a brand new consciousness was born, and I used the super technology of Reach Star to do all of this. Bucky and Pierce whispered, shoulder to shoulder. Pierce was speechless, and then became very resentful. He thought he had feelings for Bucky. He's screwed Bucky so many times. Bucky worked hard for him, going through life and death. Indecision, quantum mechanics, you just take it as a reasonable explanation. Old pie, you know me well, I hate others for whitewashing me. From the moment I wake up, you can't get anything from me except despair and pain, including the truth. Well, this sentence is the truth. What do you want to do with me? Pierce can hear Bucky's pent-up anger, and it's clear he's up to no good. He only hoped that the Bucky in front of him would not be too crazy, at least he would be honored and happy. What do you think? I have been brainwashed countless times by you, and my memory has become fragmented, but I can still remember those crimes against my will, the ghost-like guilt, the pain and struggle every time I was brainwashed, and I still remember it so far. How should I deal with you when I'm like this? What Bucky said is not false, except for the guilt. That grievance has a head and a debtor, which has nothing to do with him as a time traveler, but he still occasionally recalls the scene of being brainwashed by electric shocks when he just time travel. Howard Stark, I want to talk to him. Listening to Bucky's calm words, Pierce became more and more chilled, but the fear also aroused his desire to survive. Okay, this way please. Seeing that Bucky nodded happily, but still had the expression of "I'll kill you," Pierce said quickly. I hold a lot of secrets of S.H.I.E.L.D. You may not know it. I have let people release a lot of news that is not good for S.H.I.E.L.D. Once something happens to me, the consequences are not what S.H.I.E.L.D. Allies are also friends, aren't they? Yeah. Why don't I take you to see him now? Bucky pulled Pierce over, making him think that something happened to Howard, and Bucky was going to kill him to avenge Howard. This made him feel cold, but he saw that Bucky first pulled him to Zola, then pulled out a black line from his left wrist and plugged it into an interface of the computer, and then Zola on the screen, pixel by pixel falling, faster and faster, until it disappears and the screen turns off. However, there was a sizzle, an electric arc flickered on the computer, followed by smoke from inside, and the tape burned, and was quickly swallowed up by the flames. Pierce is a little confused, but he understands one thing. He can't blame Zola. All of this should have nothing to do with Zola. That guy has already been solved by Bucky when Fury was brainwashed. Lost. It made him wonder even more about how Bucky managed to do all of this, and made him feel even more bad about his own situation. Listen, Sergeant Barnes, I think you should give me a chance to talk without getting emotional. I'm not being emotional, don't worry, I'm very rational, otherwise you could bother me so endlessly. But if you challenge my patience again, it's not necessarily so. As Bucky spoke, he slapped Pierce on the back of the head. The damage was 0, and it was extremely humiliating, making him blush but dared not speak out. The situation is stronger than people, so he can only shut up for the time being, and after a while, he crosses the stone bridge and enters the castle. I saw that Nick Fury was leading 3 of his men and 4 super soldiers, and they were controlled by Dr. Zola's people. Most of Zola's subordinates were confused, they didn't understand the situation at all. Didn't they agree to cooperate internally and externally to eliminate Pierce, the white-eyed wolf, in one fell swoop? Although there are heavy casualties now, they have won anyway, and Pierce has also been caught. But the question is, why did they suddenly change their minds and turn their guns on them again? Hey, I know, everyone has a lot of doubts, it doesn't matter. Bucky stopped in his tracks, drawing everyone's attention, and after making a long sound, he turned his head and left. To a group of people who are popular, if there is no gun pointed, they would rush to strangle him to death. Sergeant Barnes, I can really help you if you give me a chance. Seeing that Bucky was angry just now, his mood seemed to ease a little, and Pierce started chattering again. You're just helping me, here you go, please. You. No, you can't do that. Pierce saw the familiar path, not far ahead was the gate of the brainwashing room, and his heart was completely cold in an instant. Save it. Seeing that Pierce wanted to run away, Bucky sneered, grabbed his neck so that he could barely breathe, dragged him like this, dragged him into the brainwashing room, and threw him on the chair of the brainwashing machine. Although it's not the one I used at the beginning, it's okay. Cough, cough, cough. Pierce, this is the last gift I give you. Enjoy it. This is the last free air you can breathe. No. You can't do this. No matter how Pierce struggled, Bucky still had no choice but to buckle the electric shock device on his head. Then the lightning flashed, followed by screams. Finally, Bucky closed his eyes with an intoxicated expression on his face, feeling an indescribable joy in his heart, only feeling that all the hatred and resentment in his heart flowed quietly out of his heart following Pierce's screams. Finally, he let Pierce, the chief culprit, taste the pain he suffered back then. All the humiliation in the past will be returned in full.